Hello and welcome to the Nash Tackle Off the Hook podcast. Just to make you aware, this podcast may contain some explicit/offensive language, and if that's not your thing, you don't have to listen, but I have given you a warning. I hope you enjoy the rest of the show.
You don't know the half of it, but anyway. I'm skating on the thinnest ice known to man.
He said, and they put a poison in the tank that just instantly kills them. He went and we'd run out of it, so we cut their heads off with shovels.
Suddenly, bang! The whole boat exploded.
Take your sort of 8-inch long piranha and imagine that at 4, 5, maybe 6 feet.
I said, I've revived your dead fish. F off, he said. You haven't.
That was just humongous. It was... I couldn't believe what I was looking at.
I'm just battling this fish out in the pond. I know it's a black mirror. I'm saying I'll never be a naughty boy again.
If you catch fish and you return them to the water, then you are my brother.
Luke Bowns, a.k.a. Cotswolds Puke. I can't call you Luke Bowns. How are you?
I'm good, thanks very much, and I'd prefer it if you didn't call me Luke. We'll stick to Puke.
You're affectionately known on Instagram as Cotswolds Puke. Firstly, thank you for coming in. Secondly, where's Cotswolds Puke from?
Well, it's from the Cotswolds, isn't it? I'm from the Cotswolds, so it's Cotswold Puke. My name rhymes with puke. Cotswold Puke.
Luke rhymes with puke.
Yeah, that's as imaginative as my nickname gets with my friends. It's whatever your last name is, something that rhymes with it. So, I'm Puke. Got minge, got pubes, got a whole gang of us.
I'm not long out of the Cotswolds, as you well know, because you came and saw us filming.
Yes, I did, yes.
And I have noticed that a very affectionate sort of thing for the area is everybody has a nickname, don't they?
Yeah, to the point where most people don't know our real names. Just go solely by our nicknames.
Now, that is very true of you. I think Curly, your partner in crime, who is chief photographer here at Nash.
Yeah, big ups, Curly.
He's dobbed you in on numerous occasions in terms of throughout this podcast. He will come up as a constant theme, but I think I had to check in with him how to spell your surname because I'd never seen your name that's a lie. I had seen your name written down on our consultants list actually once, and I was like,
who is that?
Luke, is that Luke from the it's Cotswolds Puke?
Cotswold Puke. Here I am. Yeah, that's me. That's my name. Don't wear it out.
How have you been recently, mate? Good? You been fishing?
Yeah, I have been out a bit. I was out perch fishing yesterday, quite unsuccessfully. I had a very good winter though. Did a bit of fishing at Bramble Mere. It's come as a bit of a tradition now. December time, the Bramble Mere Syndicate starts up. I had a good few weeks on there, just popping up. I think I only did 5 or 6 nights in total, but I had a couple of dozen fish and some real nice ones as well.
I saw a real good one, mate, a real nice one.
Yeah, there was a few. I managed to catch all the nice ones. Curly managed to catch all the ugly ones. Worked out beautifully for me.
Perfect Christmas, folks.
Yeah, I didn't have to touch Curly's camera because he didn't have a fish worth photoing.
He has photographed them. I've seen them. He showed me them. I was quite surprised that they were that.
Well, yeah. I mean, there was a couple that slipped through, didn't they, and got a photo that shouldn't have, but beggars can't be choosers.
It's fair to say your relationship as two Cotswolders is an interesting thing, which we'll talk about. I'll say relationship in the broader sense of the word, because it's more than just fishing buddies, isn't it, mate? Roommates, housemates?
Yeah. So Curly rents my spare room off me. He's lived with me for probably 7 or 8 years. And according to the national census, he is also my civil partner. Nowhere else, just on the national census. But he's also Ugandan and homosexual on the national census. So yeah, if that ever comes up in the future when he has kids, at one point he was black, Ugandan and gay with me.
I think they might write off all data from the Cotswolds region, mate.
I wouldn't take it seriously round our way.
One common feature for you and those people that have seen you on Instagram but may not know with regards to your story is a lot of your angling is based around the Cotswolds, hence the name, hence all that. There's a bit further afield which we will talk about and abroad, etc. But you are very much, and this is very much a generalisation from me, you're atypical, sort of not that vocal about your angling, very sort of under the radar, but in your own circle of anglers. You like a specific type of old English carp and are pretty much a keep it realer. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think that's probably quite a good way of summarising it. Yeah, I don't take any pleasure in like posting pictures of fish I catch particularly, and I do tend to go about things. I like to go about things my own way. Just keep myself to myself. Do my fishing. I don't care what anyone else is doing when they're fishing. Just worry about myself. And yeah, I suppose I'm pretty fussy with what I fish for. I'm very proud to be from the Cotswolds, and it's very rare, apart from travelling abroad, that I've fished anywhere else. And yeah, just where the park's always evolving, it's like you move on from lake to lake. So lakes that don't seem so appealing to me at the minute, give it 3, 4, 5 years' time, may then become a bit more appealing. And just always found that I've never had to travel for my fishing. There's always been a lake that's tickled some sort of fancy, or a fish that's ticked a box somewhere. And yeah, I just think I'm very lucky living in the Cotswolds. I've got so much fishing on my doorstep that I don't need to travel. And I like to be able to sort of live the lake lifestyle. Like I work on the lakes a lot. I live round by the park. So I'm like every day I'm on that water park, whether it be working, walking my dog, fishing. And if I was travelling for me fishing, I just couldn't do that. I'd feel so out of touch that I'd feel like I was at a big disadvantage compared to just being able to drop in, sort of live and breathe the lake almost every day. So I think that the more time you can spend at a lake, especially the sort of places I fish, like the more it's going to benefit you in the long run. I mean, I've done a lot of walking the lakes in the depths of night and stuff, listening for showers and that, and because I'm 5 minutes from my house, it's no bother. Whereas if I was fishing somewhere a bit further afield, I'd feel like I was at a massive disadvantage just not being able to be there when I'm not fishing. Yeah, it's a big thing for me, being able to sort of always be there and feeling it and breathing the lake, and just the whole park in general. Like, where we're so spoiled, it's, you know, if I turn up to my lake to fish and it's busy or whatever, I don't fancy it, there's somewhere else to go. Like, we're very lucky. I think I can't see myself travelling anywhere else, or certainly not long term. It'd be a bit different for just the odd social here and there, but
yeah,
my own personal fishing I can just see forever being based on the Cotswolds and just evolving from one lake to another.
That water park, you mentioned it there, the Cotswolds Water Park, is a ridiculous amount of water available.
Yeah.
But there is a specific type of carp angling within that water park. There isn't your high-stocked sort of levels of carp fishery, is there?
Not, I mean, there is, but not, I would say even the more Runswater type lakes on the water park are probably harder than your sort of Runswaters elsewhere. I couldn't say for sure because I've not fished them, but the ones I've fished on the water park, I mean, they're not lakes that you're turning up every weekend catching a dozen fish or more. Like, even the easier ones, it's still, I don't know, people are happy with a bite or two a weekend and that, and then it progresses right through to some of the other lakes I fish where you're talking 1 or 2 fish a season would be good going. But you are right. I think we've got, I don't know if it's like a style of angling or whatnot, but obviously we're dictated heavily with the crayfish. All the lakes are pretty much gravel pits. So that straight away would be different to, say, down this way, where you've got the irrigation ponds, and it's just a totally different style of fishing, like anywhere else to the Cotswolds. Like, I've got a big thing about it. I think if you can catch carp consistently on the Cotswolds, you can do it anywhere else, because there's a lot goes against you on the sort of lakes around our way.
100%.
With, like I touched on the crayfish, but a lot of the lakes have got swimming clubs and big boating clubs, sailing clubs and diving clubs. There's all sorts going on that park, like paddle boarders, canoeists, like you name it. Some of the parks, a lot of them public waters, so you have a couple of thousand people there on a weekend, just general public, and you sort of have to slot in between them. And it's not for everyone, but the people that do enjoy it, like, really fucking enjoy it. And I don't mind them sort of lakes, because as soon as it gets dark, the public tend to disappear, and the lakes are sort of left to the anglers then, and you've got like a, depending on time of year, like a 10-12 hour window where it's just about fishing and there's no other distractions. And I'll stay up all night on them sort of lakes, just listening out and breathing it in, and then sleep during the day once all the actions come on.
Is it fair to say that fishing-wise, for you, the sort of draw for it, obviously it's synonymous with you, where you've grown up, your upbringing, and you're used to those type of venues. That's a given. But is it fair to say that it's more about that feeling, that atmosphere that you have on there, rather than even the fish? Because there's some mega fish in there. I mean, I could name the croc. There's loads of incredible fish sometimes for the area, but that style of fishing brings with it that atmosphere that you talked about, where all the hustle bustle goes and you're left. Yeah. Is that the sort of key thing that you crave in your angling?
No, I don't crave that hustle and bustle. It just doesn't put me off in any way, shape or form from fishing somewhere. Whereas I've got mates that won't fish some of them lakes just because they are too busy with the public. So yeah, it's not something I look for in my fishing, but I just have ended up fishing a lot of them sort of places over the years. Just, I suppose, because of the lay of the land, and a lot of it is public, the bigger lakes particularly, they do just end up being busy. Yeah. Like barbecuers, parties and all that lot. But like I say, it doesn't bother me, doesn't faze me. And I know it puts a lot of people off. So sometimes them lakes can be a little bit quieter than others that aren't open to the public, but no, it doesn't bother me at all. I embrace it.
I was always quite surprised, and I think this goes up until about probably 5-6 years ago, maybe, just realising how busy those type of lakes are in terms of anglers, not the other stuff that's going on, not your fairy friends, not your crayfish, but the fact that there are an awful lot of anglers who go there, fish the likes of the lake where you're getting 1 or 2 bites a season. There's not a great head of carp. They probably won't get those 1 or 2 bites a season because it's not really about the fishing. Yeah. But they like just being immersed in the water park for whatever reason.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's like, I mean, some of the lakes, the club lakes on the park, like through spring and summer, they're that busy that if you're turning up after work on a Friday, you ain't getting a swim, like on a single. You're not even tucking in a corner. Like the corners have all gone hours ago. So yeah, it's another challenge because there is a lot of anglers on the water park, and a lot of people do travel to the water park as well. But again, coming back to being local, it's one of them I can use that to my advantage and drop on and off lakes as I see fit, as opposed to just being limited to weekends or whatever. Yes, it can be a bit demoralising when you've got an area in mind you want to fish and can't get within 80 acres of it because there's 20 anglers there, and like you say, they're just there for a barbecue and a social and pack up Sunday night, go home, not bothered if they catch, not bothered if they put rods out, some of them. But it's just the park. Like, it is a proper hub. Like, you can't drive up the Spine Road down the middle without seeing another carp angler and constantly tooting your horn, waving at people. Like, I imagine it'd be a bit like Yateley used to be back in the day, possibly, like just that real hub, like everyone knows everyone. And it's just, I don't know, it's one of the biggest things on the park is the fishing, just because there's so much water and you can't fish it all. There's a lot of dead water, there's a lot of water that's new with, hasn't been stocked, or there's a lot of, nowadays the trend is to build these posh houses around them, like the timber framed houses.
Seen you working on them, mate.
I do a lot of work on them, so I shouldn't moan about them too much, but they do eat up the lakes as well. And money talks on the water park, and there's a lot of people want to buy property, especially these like 10-month a year, like semi-permanent homes that they buy up. So you got a lot of that, but there's plenty of fishing to be had, like even off the beaten track, there's still plenty to be found if you're willing to look for it. But yeah, it's mad how quickly the park's kind of developing. There's new houses, like big building sites going up as well. They're still digging new lakes constantly for the gravel. Yeah, it's a proper like busy and bustly place at times.
It's an affluent, attractive part of the world for a lot of people, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I mean, I'm not affluent, but certainly a lot of the people I work for are.
Yeah, certainly so. I've seen that in the last few, as I said, it's probably been Horseshoe, even in a year's since fishing Horseshoe, going back there and filming our last piece, there's been a lot of developments. There's clearly a lot of money in the area or going into the area.
It's surprising just how quickly everything sells. Like everything gets sold pretty much off plans. And one of the estates I do a bit of work on, the people there buy the plot and then pick what house they want built on it, and then plots are all reserved years in advance.
Mad. For you, it's been over 30 years of angling in the water park, hasn't it, mate?
What am I now? 37. So I'd say I probably started fishing the water park when I was about 10, 12, something like that.
Just under then.
Yeah, just under at the minute.
Just under 30 years of angling there. Obviously, in that time, there's been a lot of change, not only with you, your development, your angling, but also in the area as a whole. And we're going to sort of talk through that. For me, where is the most significant place for you to start talking about with regards to your angling, your carp fishing on the water park?
Bramble Mere.
Yeah,
would be for me. Yeah, although it wasn't the first lake on the water park that I fished, but it was the one that sort of cut my teeth on. Like, it was the first syndicate ticket I ever got. I think I just started driving, so I was 17 when I started fishing there, and that was my first sort of immersive taste of proper crayfish fishing, like gin clear gravel pit fishing, stalking and stuff like that. And I learnt a lot on there. Like, that was the first lake that I fished that was properly riddled with crayfish, because back then, like 15 plus years ago, nearly 20 years ago, crayfish were quite few and far between on the water park. There wasn't that many places that had them. It's only sort of the last 4, 5, 6 years that they've really spread and taken hold.
Okay.
So yeah, Bramble would have been my first experience of fishing around the crayfish, and so since then it's just been the most important part of my fishing is how to work around them little things. But that was where it all started. Like, turning up, thought I'd be all right on tiger nuts. Like, they've said there's these crayfish in there. Cast out, reeling in the morning, no tiger nuts. I know, I'll put 2 on. Reeling in the morning, no bait left on. I'll put 3 on. It carried on. You'd end up with like 6 tiger nuts on. You might reel back with 1 in the morning. And then we move on to bits of balsa wood then.
You went straight from nuts to wood?
Yeah.
Is that because you'd seen it from somebody else, or?
I'd heard it from somebody else. Okay. Yeah, soaking balsa wood balls in salmon oil we used to do. And they'd work, but what we used to do, we'd put them on at night, because at this point, like, this is new to me. I never fished a fake bait or anything. So we'd put the balsa wood balls on at night, and then come first light, whip them in if you ain't caught nothing, put real hook baits back on, stick them back out, and sort of learned then that the crays weren't so bad in the daytime as they were at night. But yeah, this was, let's say, before plastic boilies and stuff were about, so you had to improvise then. So we started with balsa wood, and then we'd get all different types of wood and work out which ones would stay buoyant after you put oil in, and which ones would sink, which ones, like, sometimes we used to boil them beforehand so that they'd take on as much water as they would, and your buoyancy wouldn't change afterwards. And yeah, after catching quite a few carp that first year on there on bits of balsa wood.
Did you caught them on the wood as well?
Yeah, from the off as well. Like, first few nights I wasted fishing real hook baits and sort of sea fish showing on me in the morning, hadn't caught nothing, reeling, got no hook baits on again. So yeah, as soon as someone said to me about, I used to use like these balsa wood balls, I was like, got nothing to lose because I'm reeling in with no hook baits anyway. And then yeah, let's say it worked from the off. I can remember the first night I fished them, hooked one, lost it. It's like, they do work. Put it back out, and then first light landed one. And then since then, I've definitely caught more fish on artificial baits than I've real hook baits. That's for sure.
So I remember when that was like a proper leap of faith for me, putting out like a fake and like Enterprise sweet corn or something. You were like, they ain't going to have that, mate. It's a bit of rubber.
Do you know,
let alone a bit of wood.
You'd be shocked how many good anglers there are that come to a water park and just can't bring themselves to put a piece of plastic out. They'd rather shrink wrap their baits and then find out that don't work, and then use tigers, find out that don't work. And like, I've known lads that do it for seasons, reeling every morning without hook bait on, and just refuse outright to put a plastic on, just because they can't get their head around it. Like, how do you catch a carp on a bit of plastic in the dark in 150 acres of water. But you just do. Even, I like to flavour my plastics generally, but even unflavoured, like, I don't know how it works, but you can catch loads of fish in the dark just on unflavoured bits of plastic. I get why people find that a bit of a mind-blowing thought, because it is a bit alien, really. But then, I don't know, people happily use a bit of fake corn in a solid bag, but they wouldn't put 2 bits of fake corn on a hair and fish it over a load of particle, for example. Like, I think different people adapt quicker than others. Like, I've seen some people broken very quickly on the lakes that are riddled with crayfish. And
what, they've just given up?
Yeah, just come couple of sessions. Fuck this. This ain't fishing. Like, this is something else. Because the bottom of the lake bed moves. Like, at night, you flick head torch on any swim, like, there'd be anything from a couple to a couple of hundred crayfish visible. And I dare say the crays on the water park are probably as bad as they are anywhere in the UK. Like, just the sheer size of them, the numbers of them. Like, we see a few out in the stock pond earlier, didn't we? And they're only 2 inches long, whereas the ones we've got look like lobsters, 7, 8, 9, 10 inches long, even longer, some of them. And they'll do more damage to your rigs than the tiny little ones do.
Yeah, they're like industrial-sized lobsters, mate.
Yeah, like, I've played around in the edge a lot over the years, just trying to learn how the crayfish work and what they're up to, and anything under a 4-ounce lead, they'll move. So you stick your normal 3.5-ounce lead on 3-ounce, 2-ounce, whatever, they'll just drag it across the bottom like it's nothing.
I was going to say before, when you talked about Bramble, were you getting indications, like, while the crays were sort of going through?
Yeah.
So you were?
Yeah, you knew that the crays were active. You'd be getting just the odd, like, little knock here and there and stuff like that. And then it'd go quiet, and generally that meant I've got no hook bait anymore. And, like, they'll still give the plastics a good go as well, and the wooden balls and that. But it just gives you something that's presented a lot longer. Like, I've had it plenty of times reeling no plastic on in the morning. They've nicked that, but I'd rather just be fishing effectively for as long as I can. I mean, even just keeping hook point sharp is impossible. Like,
yeah, that would be my biggest sort of prang, I think.
Yeah, you just have to fish rigs. You can change your hooks for every single cast, because they'll dull them over like nothing. Like, I don't sharpen hooks because it's just pointless. Like, you weaken that point at all, the crays just fold it over. So don't sharpen them. Use massive hooks, 1s and 2s mainly, just to try and stay sharper for a bit longer, and massive leads so the crays can't move them. So I'll be whopping out 6-ounce leads and stuff just because I don't want that bait moving. I've had it plenty of times where I've cast out on the money and then reeled in. It's been dragged a rod length into the weed because I ain't used a big enough lead. And it surprised me when I worked out. I use 4.5 plus to be safe, but yeah, anything 4 ounce or under, they'll just drag it along the bottom, just stick it over their back like a little rucksack, and off they go.
As if you've not got enough with sort of, the busy nature of it, the stock density, the size of some of these places, but then you add that into the mix. And that is a type of angler, a type of sort of headspace you have to get into. I saw recently, I mean, Scott had a brilliant result, but I saw recently some of Instagram stories about the sort of unbelievable nature of, like, putting a noodle out and it being absolutely hammered.
Oh, yeah.
Various other anglers who've done it as well. I spoke to Tom Stokes, same thing. Like, it's madness.
Yeah,
and it's very unique to the Cotswolds in that degree, isn't it?
Yeah, to that extreme. I mean, there are pockets of crayfish dotted all over the country, but I don't know if it's the water quality or what, but they have just boomed in the Cotswolds, and they are massive. Like, anyone that comes thinking, oh yeah, like, my lake's got a few crayfish in, they're not that bad, I'd be all right. It ain't like that. Like, if you come with that attitude, you'll catch nothing from 3/4 of the lakes on the water park, just because your hook baits won't last an hour. Like, it's that bad. As soon as it goes dark, an hour, you'll have no hook baits on. And I know people that have come and they're like, oh, it's fine, I just recast every hour. That doesn't last very long. When you keep going, you keep putting new hook baits on, they keep taking them off. You're like, I wish I could just be fishing all night without having to change me hook bait or prang out that the crays have dragged me into the weed and stuff. So my fishing, sort of my end tackle on that is quite agricultural. It's not going to trick any wary carp, but it needs to be agricultural to get around them bastard crayfish.
We'll talk about that, the adjustments you've made and what you sort of come to the sort of modern day point, because obviously you spent a lot of time through your process of fishing on there developing that. Back to Bramble, talk to me about the fishing that you found. Obviously the cray element was in there, but the actual lake at the time, was it as it is now with regards to sort of topography, weed growth, finding clear?
No, very different to what it is now. Back then it was, big 50, 60-foot willows had fallen in the lake and been left for years and years, and the lake was like tap water clear. It was as sort of raw one-on-one fishing as you could get. Like you'd I think the syndicate back then was only about 10 or 15 members. So you'd turn up, you'd have the lake to yourself most of the time. And it taught me about sort of catching fish in the edge where the water was so clear. You'd see the bottom in 8, 9, 10 foot. And I'd just do laps of the lake, chucking in little pockets of bait in the edge till I found something. Then it was working out how to catch them. And I enjoyed that. I enjoyed watching the fish feeding, working out how to catch them, and ended up catching fish on all sorts of stupid things just to see if it'd work, like old cloves of garlic and cod liver oil tablets and all sorts, but they all worked. It's just putting them in the right place. But that was the first time I'd been able to... I'd stalked fish before on lakes, but they're always quite muddy, like park lakes and stuff. Whereas this was the first time, like, I could see individual fish on the bottom and pick out the ones I wanted and reel in if there's a group of tench there that I don't want to fuck the spot for me. And I learned a lot very quickly fishing like that. Like having to be presented, because it was one of them lakes that it was either like shingle gravel or solid Canadian. So you'd have to do a bit of spot finding, and I don't know, like even just being able to see the fish in the water just meant your watercraft could be sharper because you could go and find them. And where it was so snaggy and overgrown, chances are there'd be some fish held up in a snag somewhere, and then you'd work out the best way of fishing to them. And now it's, we took ended up working up there. A good mate of mine, Steve, owns a place now. We sort of took all the snags and that out just where we opened it for private hire. We had to cater for sort of a mixed ability of angling, and leaving these big old snags in the water. It just wouldn't have suited some of the people that were coming to fish the place. And same with like controlling the weed. I know Steve does a lot of weed control work on there, and again to sort of make it a more pleasant lake for a broader amount of people. And I still enjoy going up there. I still love going up there and catching a few, but them early days were really special. Just 17 years old, like mad keen for it. My best mate, Corpse, he was fishing there at the same time as me.
Corpse?
Yeah, Ed the Corpse. If you ever met him, you'd know why he's called Ed the Corpse. Very, very fond, special place. Like I put the otter fence up there with a group of mates back when it was the old syndicate. Like we gave up every night we had free for weeks and probably months in the end, kept the same bonfires lit and just go down after work every day, do a couple more posts or whatever, clear a bit more of the bank, stick it on the fire, right, see you tomorrow, and then go off to work and then come back the next night. And it's something to be proud of, like what we've done over the years on there, and the fact it's still really popular now. It's totally different now, but it's still a fishing lake, and it could easily have just been bought by some eccentric London millionaire, and they could have just put a big fence around it and it never got fished again. So the fact it's still there as a fishing lake, it's still got some beautiful fish in it. Like, yeah, I'm proud of everything we've done up there over the years.
Well, now the reflection is that, as you say, like it's still exclusive booking. You can still go there and fish it. There's some incredible, scaly, beautiful carp in there. Yeah. The stock, how's that changed since you originally fished it to sort of how it is now?
It's probably about 120 fish in there originally.
What size is it? What are you saying?
7 acres.
I thought it was more than that.
No,
Is it
7,
not?
8 acres. It's like almost a perfect square.
That's right.
Yeah, it was about 120 fish originally, all mirrors, not a single common in the lake back then. And like, well, you've seen the pictures of the like the originals in there. They're as sort of proper Cotswold carp as you can get. And since then, Steve's put more fish in. I think he's probably up to getting on for 200 now, something like that. But them fish were old that were in there, and you have to put new fish in, otherwise you end up with nothing left. So there's fish in there for the future now, and like we spawn fish on site there and reintroduce them into the lakes and stuff. So there's a right mix in there. But yeah, it's the one place I'd say more than anywhere else I hold dear to my heart, just because I've spent so much time up there, like 20 years near enough. It would be about 20 years. Sort of drifting in and out of the place, and as I worked there at one point and like helped set it up from the syndicate to the private hire, and got all the Instagram going and stuff like that, and got to meet loads of cool people that came up and booked it. And well, that's how I originally met half the Nash lot, was
I was going to say, yeah.
come up and booked it. Me and Dan Yeomans bonded over a teaspoon.
A teaspoon?
Teaspoon, yeah. He had the quaintest teaspoon I've ever seen a man have.
Yeah, Curly's got a good teaspoon with a queen. I think he's got a queen.
He does have a queen teaspoon. It's not as quaint as Dan's old. I can't remember where he said he got it from, but it was a lovely spoon. And ever since then, we've been inseparable.
It's a bit of you, isn't it? Novelty items. I remember I don't know if it's still running, the Cotswolds Knob Club.
Oh, we're still running.
Are you still running?
We're just not actively looking for new members.
You promised me. This sounds a bit weird. You promised me a knob, mate.
I'll give you one. I'll knob you up.
Valentine's Day is coming.
Yeah, the Cotswold Knob Club is a very exclusive club. That we pick and choose our members. It's not a case if you want a new knob on your kettle, we'll give you one. You've got to fit in.
I think it's been slow in recent years, that. Pandemic's taken effect massively.
Oh, the demand is still there, believe me.
Is it?
The demand is there, but it's all about keeping that demand higher than you're actually giving out, isn't it? Supply and demand.
Yeah, you've got to keep it exclusive, haven't you?
Yeah.
Very exclusive.
Alan's desperate for a knob, but I'm not giving him one. He's not what I'm looking for.
Where do you source these knobs from?
Various
I've
places.
seen a lot of I was going to say, I've seen a lot of variation.
Yeah, like a knick-knack shop.
Do you? Yeah,
If I'm just out and about of a day working in a random little Cotswold village and it's got a little knick-knack shop, I'll go knob shopping.
Kids, this is what happens when you fish this type of water and you've got too much time on your hands.
Yeah, you go knob shopping.
You lose your mind in novelty knobs for your kettle. That is outrageous.
Well, you say they're novelty, I say they're artwork.
I'd say, yeah, loosely it's a form of art, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's a good way of expressing yourself, having a nice knob.
So
it always catches people's attention on the bank as well if you've got a different knob to the man next door.
Yeah, it is a standout feature. It's a statement, I'll give you that. But in concept, you've basically got a lot of time on your hands. Yeomans comes down, he's got a quaint spoon, you've magpied it, and now your mate's forever.
Yeah, I daren't guess how long ago that was. It must have been 7 or 8 years ago, probably now.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah. Old Dan and Loz are my Fenland brothers from different mothers.
Yeah, they're from another part of the old country, aren't they?
Yeah, but the Cotswolds and the Fenlands, we click.
Why? Because you're all mental?
I think because we're quite inbred, yeah.
I wasn't going to say that, like, outwardly on the podcast, but you're all mad, aren't you?
Yeah, we're all unique. Mad as a box of frogs round our way. And yeah, the Fens is the only place I've found that's anywhere similar to where I come from.
Maybe, just maybe. You're fishing on Bramble. I'm taking it back, away from novelty knobs. Significant captures, early years. What stands out for you? Obviously, you've observed them in the edge, which we talked about, this learning process. But actual fish, what sort of resonates when you look back at those sort of formative years?
The old syndicate was that old school that we used to have a shed down one corner of the lake and had a catch book in it. And you had to fill out the catch book. You didn't want to be that guy that caught one, didn't put it in the book, because you're off. Your face ain't fitting. So, yeah, there was this catch book, and on the walls in the shed were all the pictures of the fish. And I can remember turning up, like, early days on there and just standing for hours in this shed, just thinking, oh, my God, I'd love to catch that one. Love to catch that one. Love to catch that one. And yeah, it become like a case of ticking them off as I went from the shed. Like a lot of them the fish didn't have names. Like a couple of them did, but not many. And they were never big fish. Like back then, they'd top out about £30. Sort of that old, leany, slow-growing strain of fish. So they were never big fish, but everyone was beautiful. Like, to my knowledge, back then, it had only been stocked once, I think in the early 80s. And yeah, you just had, every one of these mirrors was, like, unique. And I can't say that there was ever one or two that I especially wanted to catch, because it was just like every single one of them's like a trophy fish.
Yeah.
Like, I suppose a bit like you got in Stone Acres or something like that. Like, just these beautiful carp that I didn't weigh most of them. I'm terrible for weighing fish, but they're just lots of 20-pounders. But when you can see yourself, like, pick out which fish you want, like, I used to go out there, catch them on a float, like prawn as a hook bait, wait for a good fish to come in, then flick your hook bait out and watch it take your bait. And it's just lovely fishing. Like, even now I find that quite rare to be able to go somewhere that's quiet enough that you've got that ability to walk around the lake and put little bits of bait in and not have to worry about someone dropping in on it. And yeah, it just, I don't know, even still to this day, like, it's probably had the most beautiful stock of fish in a lake I've ever fished.
Really?
Yeah, they were really, really special, and some of them really didn't get caught a lot, so there was a lot of mystery to it. It's quite a small lake, and there's fish in there that would go years and years and years without getting caught, and you presume they're dead or they'd flooded out into one of the nature reserves, and all of a sudden get caught, and you're like, oh, geez, that one's still in there. I wouldn't mind catching that. Like, it won't have grown an ounce since it was out 4 years ago, but they're still in there, and yeah, it just, I don't know, that active fishing like served me really well, climbing trees and finding the fish and setting little traps. And I'd only ever settle down to fish somewhere like once it had already got dark, and then I'd just put my rods up for a couple of hours and then reel in first thing, go out finding fish again. And I think a lot of the skills I've got today are based just upon that. Like, I'd learned a lot before I went there, but just to be able to see the fish feeding, and you know, you'd see the crayfish in the edge as well and work out what they were doing. And that was the first place I ever fished, and I'd carp cough up crayfish on the unhooking mat. So straight away that was like, oh, they eat them as well. And then certain times a year when the crayfish go soft, you'd end up smashing them up in buckets, putting them out as your loose feed, because that'd be the only way you could get a bite, was using the crayfish. And yeah, cool lake. Like, very fortunate to have fished it when I did. Because a bloke that used to run the old syndicate, I only met him by chance, was carp fishing a stretch of canal, and got chatting to this bloke, didn't have a clue who he was. And he said, oh, is there any perch in this canal? I said, I think there is a few, yeah, but I don't really know. I've never fished for him. Got chatting to him, and he said, oh yeah, I've got this syndicate lake. I said, oh yeah. And as it happened, my best mate Corpse I said about earlier, he already had a ticket for this place. So I said to him, oh, my mate's got a ticket for there. The next thing I know, I got a letter in the post inviting me to join.
A letter in the post.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of that. There's still that in the Cotswolds, isn't there?
Oh, there's plenty of writing letters for tickets, yeah. Don't be spelling people's surnames wrong. That's the best advice I can give you.
I tried to get a certain member of the Cotswolds on this podcast. I think I did, but I had to write him a letter.
Yeah, you'd have to write that person a letter, and he definitely won't do a podcast.
I know. Well, I know.
Yeah.
That, or he's not received my letter.
Yeah, the old heron. Well, no, yeah, it could well be that. It's probably not made it past his team of invigilators.
Good, well, fair play to him, good invigilators.
Yeah.
But that there on that, and you said that we were going to reference those early days, but as you went through, how long did you spend on there before going, if you like, or making your progression to other waters? Was it a case of catching them all?
No, it was... I used to flirt around a lot of other places as well, and use that as like my backup water for a lot of the time, because it was quiet. You could go there on a weekend, you'd be the only person there. So I never really fished it hard, like just solely as a one water thing. I'd always dabble off. I used to do quite a bit on the canals around by me before the otters emptied them for me. And I suppose Coate Water would have been the next place I really got stuck into after after fishing Bramble, and that couldn't be much further from what Bramble's like
polar opposites.
Yeah, like Coat's 55, 56 acre big park lake.
It's park life, isn't it?
Yeah, proper, and it's on the edge of Swindon's 2 roughest council estates, which I can say because I live in Swindon. Like it's in a shithole of an area, but it had some incredible carp. And I'd always known about these carp, but never thought I'd be able to catch one. And then I think whether it is a bit of overconfidence or whatever, like caught a lot of fish from Bramble and a few other places in between, and thought now's the time I'm going to have a go on this Coate Water. And that's Bramble's probably my favourite place in terms of like the fondest memories, but in terms of where I enjoyed my fishing the most, Coate Water probably takes top prize on that.
Why is that?
You
say they're 2 different beasts.
Yeah, very different. Number of things. I think timing's one of them. Like I fish there with Corpse, and between the pair of us, we used to live a couple of miles away from the lake, and it was like in between both our houses, so we'd meet up near on every day for a dog walk, go round, and then when we decided to fish it, it was like we'll bait up when we walk the dogs round, and it just became our lives for a few seasons. Like we were there nearly every day, whether we were fishing it or not. I'd probably only fish it maybe 2 nights a week, but I'd be doing a lot of walking, a lot of baiting. So yeah, fishing with Corpse was a large part of it, and also it was the first time I'd done any proper like big fish fishing. Like I've never been a big fish chaser as such, as I touched on earlier. It's very rare away fish, but that was the first place I had some proper big uns, and having never really, I'd caught these beautiful scaly carp and fished a few other park lakes around the town, and I'd had fish to over £30 from them, but you know, Coate Water was the first place that had a 40 pounder in it, and I was probably 23, 24 then, something like that. I remember walking around before we committed to fishing it, seeing the blokes fishing, and it's like, bloody hell, they've got all the gear. Like, we ain't got half of this stuff. Do we stand a chance on here? And it's like, nah, they're just carp. I'm sure we can work it out. And we did work it out and caught loads of fish out of there in the end. But I think that was my first taste of like proper daytime hustle and bustle, nighttime nice and quiet. And I mean, it wasn't that quiet sometimes at night.
I bet.
Because of where it is, like, you used to have all sorts of things going on. It's the only lake I've ever fished that they pulled a dead body out of whilst I fished it, and it happened twice.
Twice?
Yeah, twice they pulled dead bodies out.
Oh, that's not nice, mate, is it?
No, and you know what I mean, when you're fishing and 3 o'clock in the morning, you've got coppers waking you up. Hiya, mate, have you seen this bloke? Showing you a picture. If you see him, don't speak to him. Call 999. Zip my bivvy door back up, mate. Oh, yeah. I'm not getting out. Yeah, it was always like scallywags around there, up to no good, breaking into the calf, and you get doggers up there, and I just get all sorts of weird and wonderful things going on up that lake, like because of where it is. There's some right characters that fish it as well, and sort of people that they don't go home, like they just go to lake, and that's them for the season. Like if they clock you putting out loads of boilies and you go home, they're straight in there. I'll have a bit of that. So a lot of stroke pulling, not stroke pulling as such, but you had to be secret squirrel if you wanted to continue any sort of run of success you're having. So it wasn't uncommon for me on there to catch fish and then move for the second night just to throw everyone on off the scent sort of thing on the lake. So I'd fish the back end of the lake away from everyone else, catch a couple, and move and go down the busy end of the lake. And then straight away everyone thinks, oh, he's not caught anything because he's moved down here with us. We've not caught nothing either.
So you'd literally sacrifice a night or some fishing time?
I'd knowingly sacrifice bites in order to prolong the secret sort of area that I've been fishing. So I used to bait like 4 or 5 areas, and that Coate Water was where I first got into like heavy baiting.
I was going to say, it sees a bit of bait, doesn't it?
It sees a bit of bait, and when I went on there, me and Corpse raised the water level. Like, we went heavy. I think the bait company I was with at the time, I remember when we were pre-baiting at close season for first season, I'd ordered 140 kilos of boilies, and it turned up, and it had just started turning white. So I phoned the bait company and I said, look, this is what's happened. He said, don't worry, I'll send you another 140 kilos. Just go and chuck that in somewhere. So me and Corp stood up there with throwing sticks night after night for hours, mate. And it is surprising how long it takes to put 140 kilo of 20 millers out with a throwing stick. But caught fish on it. So it worked. And I made sure from that point on that lake that I put more bait in than anyone else.
Boilie only?
Nah. No,
I was going to say, it's a lot.
There's a lot of bream in there back then. There's not anymore. He used to have these like gargantuan shoals of bream, like big black clouds drifting around the lake. And we used them in the close season to our advantage. So we'd go heavy just on cheap, like Vitalin, pigeon conditioner, that sort of stuff. Because back then the lake was pretty much a cast anywhere and you're presented. Like it wasn't weedy or anything. It is now, but it wasn't back then. And we used to use the bream to just clear off the couple, like first inch of sediment off the bottom. And then after that, yeah, we'd go boilie only and big boilie as well, like 20, 22s and 24s, just to try and get around them bream. But no, it was mainly to start with cheap particle, just to get the spot glassy, clean and smooth. And then once the bream had done their work, we'd try and shoo them off by just putting massive boilies out.
Still catch them on massive boilies?
Yeah. Yeah, just not as many. Fine, they're not so bad as tench for getting in the way with big baits. I've caught some tench on some monstrous baits, like especially the last few years where I've been just trying to experiment about how to get round the tench on some lakes. And yeah, I'll take bream over tench because once you go above 24 mil, you're struggling to catch bream.
You ever gone the other way?
Really small.
Yeah.
Not on that lake. I have on other lakes, but they were prolific, them bream on Coate Water back in the day. Like, we had a few nights where we fished over particle just to clear the spot off again, and like you'd have a dozen bream a night each, 8, 9, 10 pounders.
Oh,
big bream, but I think the biggest I had out of there, I weighed one, it was about 15.5 pound.
That's a big old bream.
Yeah, it's a big slab, that is, but not what you want when you're fishing range and all that stuff. But soon worked out massive baits, got round that problem. So I caught carp out of there on like 18 mil pop up with a 24 mil bottom bait, which at the time seemed massive. That doesn't seem massive. Like I've used a lot bigger than that now, but yeah, back then you had to get round the bream, otherwise you're just having sleepless nights every time you went. And you know, some nights you catch 10 bream and then the next one was a carp, so you'd always keep going. But there was many times when bream nearly broke me and I just wanted to reel in, go home, covered in slime, bream on all 3 rods, pissing down with rain. So, this is not my idea of fun. But saying that, when you did catch a carp, there was some really, really cool ones, totally different to Bramble. Like, Bramble's got the scaly, long, lean things. Coate Water was like, we called them the council strain carp because no one knows where they come from. It's a big council pit, so we just called them the council strain. But you'd have like, there weren't any scaly ones, but you'd have levers in there and like these beautiful apple sliced fish and some incredible commons. And like there was a lot of named fish there, a lot of character fish.
Yeah.
So it was like my first proper taste of that, like going on already having an album of fish that I know lives in the lake. And it's like, yeah, now I really want to catch these. And I had like proper targets in there, and that, like, I'm not so bothered about it now, but that at the time, that really lit a fire. Like knowing these fish were in there, it's just like, I want you. And then you catch one, you're like, right, I want your mate next, and going through them all. But yeah, just, I don't know, fishing it with Ed, putting shit loads of bait in, upsetting loads of people along the way as well. I was going to say,
how was that?
Oh, I didn't like it. These 2 young lads coming on, just chucking bait in like it was, well, it literally was like it was going off, just filling the lake, catching fish. No one else could catch a carp for a while. Like, ended up having arguments with people. You're ruining the fishing. Like, you're putting so much bait in, no one can catch anything. And like, that was just fuel to my fire because I was catching.
Yeah, you like a bit of that, don't you?
Yeah, and like I touched on right at the start, I don't care what other people do in their fishing. Like, if someone else is using ridiculous amounts of bait, you crack on. Someone else, like, do whatever you want. I don't care. The only time I might worry about what someone else is doing is if I'm getting absolutely schooled by someone. If I can't get a bite and someone's catching loads, but all I'm going to do is think, what can I do to catch, rather than I've got to find out what they're doing and I've got to find out how much bait they're using. And yeah, like I say, where I was using so much bait on Coate and keeping my captures quiet as well, it did ruffle a few feathers of people who've been on there years. And I got told when I went on there, if you had a couple of fish in a season, you're doing quite well. And I had a couple of fish within the first couple of weeks. And
is this after applying bait, or is this just dropping on and?
Nah, so Coate Water is one of very few lakes I've ever fished as a traditional closed season, and still to this day does. So that closed season, it was like Pirates of the Caribbean at that lake. As soon as it gets to dark, the pirates all come out and there'll be people buzzing about in little inflatables, baiting up and stuff like that. So yeah, we used to do loads of baiting pre-season, loads, couple of 100 kilos particle, probably a couple of 100 kilo boilie, but over a couple of different areas. So we never get like one swim syndrome where you just get stuck, and if it's not working there, you've got no confidence to move because you've got nothing else to go on. So I avoided the main bowl end of the lake. We got like a 10-metre concrete diving board sticking out the lake and stuff, and that end's always busy with anglers. So I just avoided that altogether and baited up areas at the other end of the lake, and then could just bounce between them all. And that's even if I caught a fish, I'd still bounce off and go somewhere else. And it was like that learnt me a lot, just in terms of how powerful bait could be. Because on Bramble, a lot of it was about finding the fish and then fishing for them. On Coate Water, there was no features. Like, it was just a big, loamy pit. So you could see them in the closed season when they spawned there's a shallow bay, but you weren't ever stalking carp in Coate Water. And you had to, or I learned quite quickly, bait was your feature. Right. And if you could get them coming back to an area knowing there'd be food there, yeah, it was just a case of picking them off each time I went up. And
didn't show much then? You wouldn't see, if you lapped the lake at night, first light, last light, you wouldn't see.
I did two hard seasons fishing on there, and I could count on one hand how many fish I saw show in 2 seasons. And that I was fishing that hard, so like good 3 nights a week for 2 years. And yeah, you just didn't see them show. I don't know why. It had a reputation from not showing, and it held true. Like it was all gut instincts. I just used to divide the lake up into 2. Like there's a bottleneck through the middle. You'd have bottom and top end, and I'd just try and work out what end I thought they'd be at, and then go from there. So although I never pre-baited the bowl end, I would fish there if I thought the fish were down there. Whereas I'd only bait the top end because I knew that people would generally leave it alone unless they found out what I was up to. But it was very rare they did. There's quite a few. There's one time I remember fished in a swim. It was opening session actually, June 16th. Caught one the first night, and this is long before Curly worked at Nash. I phoned Curly up. Any chance you come up do pictures? He's like, oh mate, just got to my parents. They lived about half hour, 40 minutes away. He's like, just got to my parents for a roast dinner. He's like, what have you got? I was like, I got good, mate. He's like, all right, fuck it, I'll be down in a bit. So he's come down, done a picture of this fish for me.
How big is the fish?
It was a little resident. It was 32, 33 pound, but nice. One of the proper characters that I'd really wanted. Yeah, so he's come down, done the picture, come back. Half an hour later, caught another one. Phone Curly. Like, Curly, any chance you come do some pictures? He was like, for fuck's sake, just got to my parents' house for the 2nd time. My mum's going mad at me. What have you caught? I was like, it's another good one. All right, I'll be there in a minute. So he's come down again. He's walking up the bank. He's got waders on around his neck, fucking camera around his neck as well. Some angler's gone to him, oh yeah, Luke had one, has he? Curly was like, no, just needs to borrow some waders. He's like, what about the camera? Curly's just like, oh, I've just bought that, just to take some pictures of the birds and that. Matey boy's like, oh yeah, whatever. Curly's done the pictures, fish, put it back. Matey boy that he just spoke to's come in the swim. Any good? I'm like, no, mate. I nick him, that's wet. Like, everything's wet. And she's like, no, mate.
Blatant.
Yeah, but you had to.
Just
like,
you just front it out.
Yeah, I wouldn't give a fuck, mate. I'd just tell them straight. I ain't had nothing.
Yeah.
Go away. Like, I had it once in that same swim, funny enough. Like that one, I used to wade about 100 yards up the margin. It was only dead, like knee deep, shallow. It got to a certain point, and I'd put a little square of carpet on the floor, and it was where it was only knee deep. You could just about make out the bottom. So I knew if I walked up, stood on this square of carpet I'd put in the water, it's only about 8 wraps straight out from the bank from there. And I caught one from there, and I can remember playing this fish, looking across the lake and thinking, fuck, that looks like an angler. So I played it in, landed it, and this bloke stayed there the whole time. Gone home, come back up a couple of days later. There's not one, there's not 2, but there's 3 bivvies in that one swim. It was only a 1-person swim. There's 3 bivvies in there. And me being me, I just bowled in. I'm like, all right, mate, caught anything? He's like, no. Like, what made you all go in here then? 3 of you. Mate, boy's gone, fair play to him. He goes, I ain't going to lie to you, mate. I saw you catch one the other day. So I watched where you walked to on the bank, watched where you cast, and now I'm having a go in it. I was just like, fair enough. At least you're honest. And I think they fished in there for about 11, 12 nights, the 3 of them. They had 1 fish between them. And in that time that they were in there, I think I'd nicked another 3 or 4 bites from elsewhere on the lake. Sort of, I just wrote that off. Like, that can keep them busy for a bit. And I'll go to one of my other spots. But that's how savage it was. Like, if people saw you catch something.
What are your thoughts on that? I don't know I've never been. I've been in a situation where people have fished a pre-baited area knowing that you've pre-baited, and it's a bit annoying. But I don't know. The stakes haven't been as high as that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, the way I've looked at it, especially these sort of waters, like Coate Water, it was pretty much open access. Like, there was a night syndicate, but it might as well have been a club ticket. Like, they didn't have a cap number of members or anything. And on places like that and your club lakes, I always think you can't shotgun an area of water. Like, no one can demand that respect. So if they knew I was putting the bait in on there, there's not a lot I could do about it, because it's any man's game. On, like, not that you ever did, but on Bramble back in the day, if you wanted to put a bit of pre-bait, and you could say to lads, look, I've stuck a bit in there, do you mind just leaving it? Yeah, no problem. But you likes Coate Water, they just didn't like that. It's ruthless. So it was just, I don't know, it's a case for me of just getting the bait in without people knowing, and catching fish without people knowing. And it's fun and games, but yeah, if you told people, if you're too kind, you just end up spiting yourself, because you just wouldn't be able to get anywhere near where you wanted to be.
Have they come to a head over stuff like that or not?
1 or 2 times, yeah. Just because of that whole thing of, like, people saying, you know, you're putting too much bait in, it's killing the fishing for everyone else. Well, it's not. If I'm catching fish, then it's not killing it for everyone. Corpse is catching fish. Maybe you should put more bait in. And there was a couple of lads on there that I got quite friendly with, and they did. They upped the amount of bait they put in, and they started catching fish as a result of it. But yeah, it comes back to that whole thing. I don't care what other people do in their fishing, and I almost want the same in return. Like, people to just leave me be and let me crack on with it. And yeah, Coate Water was the one place that you can't be left alone to crack on with it. You've always got eyes on you, and the people that struggle on there can be quite ruthless in terms of they find out where the last fish comes from, and they're just in there till they hear of another fish coming out somewhere else. So I do a lot of just turning up in the dark, setting up, catching photos at first light, go home, go to work. People are none the wiser, which I think is probably why people thought I'd killed the fishing for everyone on there for a bit, because no one was catching. They assumed the whole lake wasn't doing bites, whereas I was quite consistently catching at that point.
And you think the keys to that were obviously the fact that you kept it quiet, but the fact that you also had various different things going in terms of baited areas?
Yeah, massively, yeah. So I'd 5 swims that I could fish, like 3 areas, but 5 swims. And the idea behind that was, I'm not going to blow a spot if I've got several spots. And if the lake's got a few anglers on, there's always an area, or should always be an area I could drop into that's not got loads of angling pressure. So I didn't care if I turned up, someone was fishing in one of the swims I've been pre-baiting for half a season. It didn't matter. It's like I'd have somewhere else to go. And having that choice of them 5 swims meant that I could always kind of be somewhere near where I wanted to be.
Did you pre-bait, like, let's say you go into some of these swims, was it a blatant spot that was pre-baited, or was it like, did you try and sort of, I don't know, tuck it on the edge of a swim boundary, or find a real, was it just blatant amount of bait in the middle, big, basically, clear area?
Yeah, because there wasn't, especially when I started on there wasn't a strand of weed in the whole lake. Like, you could quite literally cast anywhere and be fishing. So it was quite often a case of picking an area of water that might be a little bit harder to access.
Yeah.
Like, say, whether you had to wade up a margin to cast to it, or there was a couple of swims I was fishing. I was just fishing a little bit further out than some people would be fishing. And
what are we talking yardage there?
Not massive on there. I had a couple of spots that were between 120, 130.
Right, which is fairly long, right?
Yeah, just nowhere near as long as I've ended up fishing on lakes more recently. But yeah, just picking zones, if you will, that were not in the most popular swims. That was another thing, is like I'd done my research before I went on there, and I knew what the really popular swims were, and I just stayed well clear of them. No interest in them. People can help themselves. I'll pick a couple of quieter swims. And yeah, just that whole kind of bait and wait really worked on there. Like, because you couldn't see it. It got to a point you just stopped getting up at first light in the morning, because there's no point, you wouldn't see nothing. So yeah, I know, them sort of sneaky nighttime, because I'd only ever bait up in the dark as well. Never bait up in the day and risk someone seeing me. So I go up there at night, like say hours with a throwing stick or spomming. But then when you go back 2 days later and you're like, I've put 50 key of bait in over 2 spots, like, game on. Yeah.
Captures wise, did you have any of the big ones, the 40s?
Yeah. I didn't catch. So the real reason I was on there was the resident.
Yeah.
If that fish, well, it's long dead now, but should that fish get caught tomorrow, I would be back on Coate Water tomorrow.
Why is that?
Because I fucking love that fish.
Why do you love it?
I just think it's the coolest carp for where it lives, for how big it got, its shape, just everything. It was just a wicked brute of a fish. Like, it lives in a hellhole, and it got to near on 50 pound back when that, like, there wasn't a lot of fish of that size about. People travelled from all over the country to come and fish Coate Water for that resident. So that was the real target. But yeah, I didn't catch that one, but I caught pretty much everything else I wanted out of there. Like, now it's had a bit of a resurgence, and I think a few of the smaller fish have grown through, doing quite well in there, but I've caught them all before at smaller weights, and it's not the sort of place I'd go back for repeats of fish at bigger weights. I think.
Would you do that at all? Are you a repeats of the same fish at bigger weights, man?
No.
I was gonna say.
Not targeting a fish. Like,
would you even go back somewhere if they're the same fish?
If there was one I hadn't caught,
okay,
possibly, yeah. But that was the reason I ended up pulling off Coate Water. Like, we had suspicions a resident died, and also just started racking up the repeats real consistently. Like, it's almost like if I caught 3 fish, 2 of them would be repeats, and that quickly took the buzz away from fishing there.
Yeah.
Just like, I know you can look at it as, you know, it's another bite, spots working and stuff like that, but it was just almost like a wasted bite. Like, I'd rather have not caught a repeat and had that rig in the water for 10 minutes longer to see what else might have picked it up than catching the same friendly one. I mean, they weren't necessarily friendly. It's just, there was probably 50 fish in Coate Water. I think in the 2 seasons I caught about, I think I had 37 different ones out of 50 fish. And yeah, there was a few that I had 3 times, 4 times. And that was the point when it's like, I've still got a couple of the big ones I haven't caught, but
Do you think that's because those fish were more conditioned to bait, or do you think those fish were just more susceptible to being hooked? Why do you think that eluded you?
I mean, the resident, it was a funny fish because it could go years without getting caught. I remember one stint where it was either 5 or 6 years it went uncaught for. And then the Cotswold mystery man that we spoke about earlier went on there and caught it. But there was other seasons that it'd come out, like, not when I was on there, but prior to me going on there. There was other seasons where it might do 4 bites in a year, and it'd be quite friendly. But it come out, the 2 seasons I fished on there, come out once, and it come out 48 hours after I'd pulled out of that same swim. Actually, no, that's a lie. There's twice it come out. Leon Bartrop had it.
Oh yeah, Leon talked about it on his podcast.
Yeah, it was quite a funny one, that. So, like I said, I've been pre-baiting these 5 swims. I've turned up, looked at the bowl end, didn't fancy it. So I'm going up in one of my pre-baited swims. So driven up to the other end, walking down, got to peg 1 was where I fancied. Got into that swim, and there was a couple of scallywags sat in there with a little boom box, having a spliff, minding their own business. And I thought, I wouldn't mind going in here, but I'll leave him to it. Can't be asked with the aggro of asking him to move. I'll drop a few swims down where I've pre-baited as well. Makes no odds to me. So I've gone in peg 5, left peg 1 alone. Had a phone call about 4 hours later. Rezzy's in the net. I was like, where? Peg 1. I was like, oh, good joke. I was in peg 1 a couple of hours ago. There was a load of chavies in there. There ain't no one fishing in there. My mate was like, go up to peg 1. I promise you that resident is in someone's landing net. And yeah, walked up. Leon's there, right, Leon? You got the resi? He's like, yes, I have, actually. I was like, how long you been in this swim? He's like, hour and a half.
I think that might have been his first bite as well.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. How's your luck? So I like Leon. He, shook his hand and congratulated him and that. But yeah, got caught then. And then the other time it got caught was in the middle of winter between Christmas and New Year. And I'd fished in a swim. Not caught anything, but I'd seen one. Very rare that you'd see one, especially middle of winter. And I'd seen one show. So I put a bit of bait out, like 5-6 kilo, but in the middle of winter. But I just fancied it.
Yeah.
And yeah, went home. 2 days later, residents on the bank. Where from? He said the swim. I was like, bollocks. Went up there to see the bloke, shook his hand. I was like, if you don't mind me asking, how far out you fishing? He said, oh, I can't remember what it was, 20 summit, whatever, wraps towards them steps. I was like, that makes sense. That's where I put 6 kilos of bait 2 days ago. And he said, oh yeah, it was shitting out a load of bait on the mat as well. So it was like there's no guarantees I'd have caught it if I stayed in there, like whatsoever. But it's just one of them, like, I was in the right area. But
it's amazing, especially winter time, how many times people can go up and, like, they might catch absolutely nothing, but if you do get a bite, it's one of those bigger, greedier. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Well, ironically, the fella that caught the resident, he came back a couple of days later, fished the same swim again, caught the second biggest fish in the lake off that same spot. Like, as soon as I had the resi had come out, I'd pulled off then and wasn't worried about what else was due to be caught. But yeah, he caught 2 biggest fish, like a week apart, back to back, from that same spot in the middle of winter.
Rig wise for you on there, you're obviously chucking a fair old way in some swims. What was the keys to it? Was there a prolific crayfish population?
No, zero crayfish in that lake. It was just the bream that were a nuisance. Bream and the birds. Big snowmen. Caught most of my fish out there on big snowmen. I'd say either a 20, 22, 24 bottom bait, and then
big hook again, still a 1 and a 2. Or, okay.
Yeah, like a massive hook. Yeah, that seemed to sort them out.
Hook like, pattern?
Curve shanks on there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Straight point.
Yeah, straight point.
Okay.
Fishing it like, I don't know what is it, KD style they call it, where it's just straight off the back of the eye. So a big size 2 curve shank and then a big snowman bait on the top of it. And yeah, supple braid as well. Leg clip, supple braid. Did me quite well. I think, if I remember rightly, I only lost 1 fish on there. Whole time I was fishing it, and I was in a swim that had it down like clockwork. Like bite time it's like 6:45 till 7:15. It was a real short window, but they were on the feed at that time on that spot when I was there, and I knew it. So I used to sit by my rods, just wait. And this one morning, and sat by my rods, off it goes, watch the take. Struck into it, had it on 5-6 minutes and bumped it. It's the first one I bumped, and I was fuming, reeled it in, nothing wrong with the rig, nothing wrong with the hook bait. So I've left the same rig, same hook bait on, wrapped it up, got it back out there, and within 5 minutes that same rod's gone again. And that's a fish called Black Spot, like £35 I think. It's the one that I had second time round. So there's no rhyme nor reason I could work out why I lost that one. It was the only one that ever fell off on there, but the same rig went back out with the same hook bait, caught me one of the 18 within 5 minutes.
Bird life.
Bird life bad.
Yeah, talk to me. Bird life. What did you do? Dark hook baits? How did you get around it?
Big baits. If you go 24 mil,
I don't want them.
No, seagulls can't fit a 24 in their mouth. So for throwing stick in, the 24s were an edge. And at the company I was using at the time, I used to get, Matey Boy probably hated it, but I used to get them to put loads of extra oyster shell in the bait to make it heavier.
Yeah.
And yeah, I launched them 120 yards and 24 mil oyster shell ridden.
That's hard work with a throwing stick when you're doing quantities.
It is, but I was determined that's how I wanted to fish. Like spread to boilies, didn't want to be spomming, and little piles of whole boilies is just hideous. So I'd be determined, and I'd just stand there all night, me and Corpse with a throwing stick, just these 24 millers. Thud.
They still dive on them in the day if you put them out, the old seagulls, but just couldn't fit them in the mouth or not.
The coots would dive a bit, but they'd struggle to fit them in their mouths. Yeah. Like every now and then you'd see one eat one. It'd have this great big boil on the side of its neck for the rest of the day where it couldn't swallow it properly.
Yeah.
Proper big donkey chokers.
You're a little gobstopper.
Yeah, but it was there that taught me you can use really big hook baits and catch carp, and not many people like a big hook bait.
Yeah, that's another leap of faith, isn't it, in terms of you fishing, I think. But as you say, you're put in that position on there, really, in the grand scheme of things, with the bream and with the amount of feed you've got to put out. You're not going to put out a bunch of 12 millers, are you?
No, I mean, funny enough, Corpse did do it once. He thought, we've done everything we can to get around these bream. I'm just going to embrace them for a night because I wonder if there's loads of carp in among them. So he went heavy with a load of 10, 12 millers and a load of particle.
Oh, my life.
And yeah, I went round to see him in the morning. And Broken man. He had a bream on all 3 rods still. He's in his bed, just zipped up, and he was just giving up on life. He's just like, you can reel them rods and I'm not putting them back out. I'm well into double figures with bream now, and I don't know why I did that. It was a stupid idea. So straight away after that, he went back to the big baits.
It's a lot to be said for it. From Coate, where'd you go? Because obviously that's a you've gone from 2 different contrasting venues. You've gone, I'd say, upper level. That's no disrespect to Bramble.
Oh no, much harder water. Coate
in terms of difficulty, yeah. What sets you up now? Is the water park your oyster? Or are you sort of right? I've done there. If I can catch on there and get something going with regularity, anywhere I can go and turn my hat to, or was it a case of sort of the next progression for you?
Trying to think where I went straight after Coate. I've done a lot of dabbling over the years where I just hop on and off lakes and just do a couple of trips, catch a fish, go to another lake. A lot of them lakes I'm not meant to be fishing as well. So there was a bit of that after Coate Water. And it couldn't have been that long after I ended up bought myself a 6-month ticket for Horseshoe. And that was, again, something different because that can be really prolific if you get it right. So when I started on there, it was like, right, go on there, try and catch a couple. And by the end of it, it's like, if I'm not catching 10 fish in 2 nights, I know that I'm in the wrong place. And that sharpened me up a lot, just going somewhere where you can catch a lot of fish, play around a bit with rigs and hook baits and see what does and doesn't work and get feedback from the lake. Because a lot of the other pits on the water park where they're like less than a fish an acre, it's not the sort of place you want to be experimenting too much.
Did you feel you needed to experiment?
No, but I like
it. Okay.
Yeah, just little fit like, let's say with big baits, I'll roll a 60 mil hook bait and then think, I wonder if I can catch a carp on that. So I'll do it on somewhere like Horseshoe. or just any sort of tweaks or playing around. Like, it'd give me feedback on whether it was working or whether it's costing me bites, and then I could take that then back to the other lakes I fish and apply it, knowing that it works. And it was good. Like, Horseshoe was back. Coate Water, you never catching a fish off the top. You're never stalking a fish. It's just all bait and weight. Whereas going on to Horseshoe, like, love floater fishing, and that, especially through, I had a 6-month ticket through spring and summer, so did a lot of floater fishing on there.
Oh, so it's spring and summer, not winter?
No, I went
Right.
spring and summer on there. I was waiting on another ticket to come in, so bought a ticket for there and had a target fish in mind. Kind of ballsed up my plan a bit because I caught that after about 3 weeks of fishing there. So then after
Horseshoe?
Yeah.
What was your target fish?
That one-eyed linear.
Right.
Shout out to Tommy. He's also caught it.
So, yeah, Tommy has.
Yeah. Yeah, that fish, that ticked a lot of boxes, that one. It's proper old. One of the oldest fish in Horseshoe, that one.
But when you're talking about targeting a fish on Horseshoe, you're playing the numbers game.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So although I say target, what I mean is I had one fish I really wanted to catch. Like you say, it's not the sort of place, just because of the size of it and the amount of fish in there, you can't single it out. But so I knew it'd be like a wading through numbers game. But yeah, like I say, I caught it quite quickly after getting my ticket on a zig, and it didn't kill the vibe, but after that, it was just purely about trying to be like as efficient at fishing Horseshoe as I could. So just going up and getting loads of bites, and didn't photo hardly any of them because they just, a lot of the fish in there, younger fish, stock fish and stuff. And, you know, you've got to stock lakes, but the ones I like are the old ones. And
was it you said to me when we were out last week, you said something like they've got to be older than you are?
Yeah. I like, as a general rule, if a fish is older than me, it's worth catching. Which I know doesn't make sense to some people, but like nowadays you can buy scaly fish from any fish farm. So scaly fish don't mean anything. You can buy plain fish from a fish farm. It doesn't mean anything. But fish has got a bit of age to it and it's got some stories to tell. It just excites me more, just makes me more interested than going somewhere that's got loads of young big fish in that are well game for a bite. I just like them old ones that look better and they've lived a life, and makes me think about I wonder how many other people have caught it. And do you know what I mean, that one in Horseshoe, he's like 40, well over 40 years old, that one-eyed Lynn, and do you know what I mean, 35 years ago someone would have caught that.
Yeah.
And it was an incredible fish 35 years ago, but it's still going now. And I think that's what makes them old ones really special, is they've been there, they've done the rounds, they've seen it, they've survived fish kills, they've been caught before, and they're still there to tell the tale. And as I get older, it's getting harder and harder to find lakes that have got fish older than me in it.
Yeah.
To start with, it's like every lake's got fish older than me in it, whereas now I'm approaching 40 and there ain't that many places that have got them old carp anymore.
There certainly isn't. But I like the sort of reference standpoint. I just found it, I remember thinking, I'm 37, like where would you go? It's hard. And that's opened it up to like, there might be lakes, but there's only one or two fish in those lakes where they're that age.
Yeah, exactly. But it's just because I'm not motivated about the size of fish. Like, I'll never fish for a fish because it's a big one, and the age is much more appealing to me than the size of the fish. If it's an older fish, it's worth more to me than a bigger fish would be.
It's also you sort of play that, and you said it there before, you trade off sort of the look of a fish over the age. You'd rather have an absolute battered, I'm putting this in the most horrible form, the most battered, like ruined mouth thing that's lived,
as opposed
old to a new penny straight from the fish farm that looks mega.
Yeah, it looks beautiful. Like, so, you know, you can buy beautiful stockies, but just the fact that they're not very old, I know it's a bit snobby and a bit purist, but I just like catching old fish. I'm quite happy to leave the big ones for everyone else.
But I think the one thing about you and people who know you, especially like the lads that you fish with, it's not only the area you fish with, the type of fishing that you do and what resonates with you, but it's the fact that you are just undecidedly unapologetic about your stance on it. That's what you want from people. That's their honesty, and that's what you don't want somebody to go, oh yeah, like that's fine. you want people's opinions on things. That's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, exactly. And I've always been known to shoot from the hip and let people know how I feel about anything and everything.
Shoot from the hip, boy.
Yeah.
The next choice of venue, you said there's a bit of guesting.
Yeah.
And then on to Horseshoe for that 6-month period of experimentation.
Yeah.
Post experimentation, the lessons you took away from there being a busy venue. What was transferable? Because when I look at lessons, like I look at sort of the fishing that I've done, and I've fished venues that are a lot more heavily stocked, and I don't necessarily think that a lot of those lessons are transferable when taken to waters where you're talking about lesser bites that are very different in nature. I think the fish, especially on Horseshoe, they're highly pressured.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of places for them to escape to or get out of the way. A lot of it is hit fishing, i.e. you're going to get a pack come on you, it's going to be 5 or 6 bites, and you're trying to keep them there. Whereas on a different pit, you're going to pre-bait, you might get those 3 fish that you want to target come in, and you're getting 1 bite a year. Different circumstances, very different. What did you find was transferable across to sort of the rest of your fishing from there?
The main things I took away from Horseshoe was, it's hard to say what ones are sort of quite specific to the lake itself, but I learned quite quickly on Horseshoe that if you weren't on the fish properly, you were never going to catch much. So watercraft wise, it really sharpened me up, like gave me that drive to be up like half an hour before the sun comes up every morning, because I know somewhere they'll be showing. And fishing mobile, I've always been very mobile anyway, but on there really, like you could set up on the mother load of fish on there at night, pick off a couple of fish, wake up in the morning at the other end of the lake, and I just trained myself to always be searching actively for them, even if I'd caught fish. Like, I didn't think I'd caught what I should have, given the amount of fish I'd seen, then I'd need to improve. And on there, it was all about finding that mothership of fish. And then, so when I went on there to start with, it's all about catching a couple of fish. Whereas by the end of the 6 months, if I got on that mother load, it's like, right, now it's up to me to keep him here, keep him feeding, and keep the bites coming. And
would you want to get on the mother load, get rods out and fish within them, or would you want to preempt? Because I've been on a few waters where I've seen the mother load and purposely fished a swim or 2 where I think that they're actually going to.
It depends how much time I have. On Horseshoe. A lot of my fishing in general is work nights. I'm not a long session angler, so if I was just turning up an hour before dusk, it'd be a case of find anything, get on it. If I had a couple of nights on there, then there'd be a lot of that sort of trying to preempt where the fish are going to turn up, especially if you knew where they were and there's maybe a few anglers on them. But you see, it just comes back to that watercraft again, like checking the weather, seeing if there's any changes during the weather, and just getting that one step ahead of them. And Horseshoe's good for giving that feedback. You know if you're doing it right because you'll be catching, and if you're not catching, you're doing something wrong. There's always bites to be had on there. Like, even when it's busy, the fish are never going to be in one ball on there. Like, there's always going to be groups of them. So even if it was busy, I'd still want to go on there, get on fish and try and catch a couple. I'd never turn up and be like, oh, the good swims are gone, so this is going to be a blank. Like, it ended up very rare I'd blank on there just because I knew I could find them somewhere if I looked hard enough. Normally, further away from the car park you go, there's normally a few fish to be found, and that'd be me at the top end out of the way then.
Next challenge after Horseshoe?
Did a season on Farriers after that.
That's random, isn't it?
It is for me, yeah, very random one for me, because I've
built up this big hardcore Cotswolds, low stock, big pick, and you've gone, I'm going Farriers.
Yeah, I've gone to like the most expensive pay lake on the park.
I knew he wasn't going to like it as a bite.
Yeah, so Farriers, that came about as a kindly gift from my parents, so I'd never be able to justify spending that sort of money on a ticket.
What's the most you've paid for a ticket, apart from, obviously, which you've not technically paid for, this Farriers ticket?
had a sand and gravel ticket. That was about 650 quid. I fished it once,
Right.
never went back. So that was an expensive ticket for a night.
Why didn't you go back?
Didn't like the lake, mate. Just,
What was it about the lake?
I don't know. It just wasn't what I had in my head. Like, I had a couple of mates on there that had sold it to me as just this sort of overgrown, like cut your own swim out in a overgrown little corner and stuff. And when I went up, because you couldn't walk it before you bought your ticket, and I paid my ticket, then walked it and was like, oh, it's definitely not like I imagined it to be. And yeah, it was busier than I expected. It just wasn't what I was expecting, so I just didn't gel with it.
Fair.
Walked the dog around it a few times and wrote it off as just a lake that's not for me. But yeah, Farriers, I think that was at the time was probably $750. Like I say, my parents bought me that for my birthday. I can't remember what birthday it was. And yeah, that was something totally different again. Like, it's like fishing on a golf course almost. It's so well maintained and pruned and neat and tidy, and a lot of rules on there as well, and a lot of eyes on you.
How did you find the rules situation? Because obviously a lot of the water park is do as you do, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, a lot of the water park is not anything goes, but not far off. Whereas that's a complete opposite. And I got off, I won't lie to you, Hassan, I got off on a bad foot with one of the bailiffs on there before I'd even wet a line. Yeah.
You?
Yeah, I know. So I got added to a private Facebook group for the lake, like when I got my ticket. I'm not one for all them groups and that, but I didn't have a choice, got added into it. So I thought, I'll have a look through it. Like, it was a week or so before my ticket actually started. One of the most recent comments on it was from one of the bailiffs on there, and it was just basically they'd had a fish trail in a rig, and on Farriers you're not allowed leaders of any description, not allowed barbed ducks, not allowed anything. And this bailiff had gone to town. I think his words were something along the lines of, I'm sick to death of these fucking sponsored anglers coming on the lake thinking they can do whatever they want. The reason this fish is tethered is because of sponsored anglers. So I commented without even fishing the lake yet.
This is your first comment?
My first interaction with anyone that fishes there.
Hello,
on
lads.
This Facebook group. Yeah, I just said, hello, mate. New member here. Also sponsored angler. Look forward to meeting you soon.
You love a bite.
Well, I just thought that was a bit of a low blow, innit? Tarnishing every sponsored angler as a rule breaker. And I won't mention the guy's name, but I had an on-off relationship with him for the entire season I fished there after that. He come around the first time I was there, chatting away, start slagging off sponsored anglers again. I said, oh, I'm sponsored. I'm that guy that posted on the Facebook group the other day. He's like, oh, fucking hell, well, be keeping my eye on you. I know what you're all like, desperate to catch fish and all that. Like, yeah, off you go. And just whilst on the subject of him, so I can remember one morning, I used to do a lot of work overnighters on there. And at that point, I wasn't self-employed. I used to work for a fencing company. So I used to have to be out the gates for like 10 to 7 in the morning on my work nights. And I'd set up on fish the night before. I'd had one during the night. And then that evening, this particular bailiff had come around to see me. When you're on tour, so I'm just doing a quick overnighter as normal. I'll be off out the gates 10 to 7 in the morning. First light next day. So I had one in the night. Photoed that. Literally the crack of dawn. It must have been 10 past 6. This bailiff's come walking around again. Can you check your rigs? I was like, what for? You checked them yesterday. No, I want to check them again. With that, big mirror's gone bowling over my spot, right in front of him. Like, mirrors are rare as hen's teeth on there as well. So this big mirror's lopped over, and I'm like, I ain't reeling my rods in, mate. Like, well, you got to. I was like, I'm not doing it. You saw him yesterday. I'm going in half an hour, so I'm not touching him. If you want to reel him in, you can reel him in. So with that, I led him my bed. He reeled one of my rods in.
He never picked your rod
Yeah,
up.
picked my rod in, looked at it, picked the next rod up, reeled it in, looked at it, went, yeah, they're fine. That could have been a lot easier. And off he went. And then it couldn't have been that long after that it's worth me saying this bloke couldn't catch a fish in a fucking stock pond. And
Well, go easy. That cuts deep.
well, no offence to Henry that can't catch fish in stock ponds either. And I can remember it. This was like later on in the season, and he'd not caught anything all year, and I'd had a very good year. And it must have been February, March time. And he's come round to me. And he said, Luke, do you mind if I pick your brains? And I thought, here we fucking go. Yeah, go on then. He's like, what are you doing to catch so many fish? I've fished here 20 years. Haven't had one this season. And I think it's my bait. I'm using a winterized version of the boilie I use. And it's February now. I'm not sure if it's summer bait time. I just laughed at him and said, mate, it's not the bait that's the problem. I think it's the person using it. And he got all huffy with that. Off he goes. Anyway, I've gone for a walk around the lake. Found a few fish on the top. Bear in mind, this is like end of Feb. He hasn't caught fish all year. I've gone for a walk, found some fish. Caught one off the top. Phoned him up. Said, all right, mate. I've got a mid-30, just caught it off the top. Can't believe it. Can you come photo it? He went, can I fuck? Hung up on me, never spoke to me again. That was the end of my dealings with him. He was not a fan of anyone that was sponsored or could catch fish. And being both, that was a double whammy on there. Like, you were targeted big time. I had my ticket clip once for wading when I was wearing flip-flops. The water wasn't even over my feet. It was just touching my toes.
You have made yourself a bit of a target here, though.
Yeah, I mean, I'd hasten to add as well that I did get on very well with some of the bailiffs on there. Like head bailiff Jace, got on really well with him. It's the only place I've ever fished where the bailiffs are given bailiff status through long service.
Yeah.
So if you fish there for 20 years, you'll probably get asked to be a bailiff. So it's based nothing on
expertise or
or your
like
ability
that.
to actually bailiff a lake or anything like that, or your people skills or anything like that. It's just you fished here 20 years, you can be a bailiff now. Here's your free ticket. And to some of them, it went to their heads. Not all of them, but just some of them. And like I said, I did used to have fun and games with that one particular bailiff that just couldn't catch fish to save his life, and got to a point every time I'd see him, I'd be like, I've had another one, mate. Yeah, oh, for fuck's sake. But yeah, I did only do one season on there. I think I ended up 44 fish, I think I had. Jeez. I was desperate in the end just to try and catch a mirror, but couldn't do it. So I ended up, the only fish in there you could actively target, there was this big bright orange koi. And I'm not a man for koi whatsoever. But coming towards the end of my ticket, I was bored of catching big commons. There's so many of them in there that you stop photoing them after a while because...
Why? You've glossed over catching a load of big commons. We're going to talk about one common that there is a photo sort of and all this stuff, but we'll talk about that in due course. You said they caught a load of them, which you have done. Why do you think you were catching them? Was it because, from what I know of farriers, shallow, weedy, clear spots in the weed, you're fishing little holes.
Yeah.
That's pretty much all I know of it. A mega stock of big commons.
Incredible stock of fish, yeah.
But why do you think that because of the stocking density, because of the fact there was so many fish, because it was so blatant that it was weedy and you were fishing those little clear spots, or did you do something a little bit out of the ordinary with regards to how you fished it because of the type of lakes you've come from that allowed you to sort of catch 44 carp in a season?
I mean, at the start of my ticket, when I first went on those, the tickets start at a weird time. I can't remember exactly when it is, but I think they might start like the first week of July or something like that. And I didn't hit the ground running straight away. I had a few fish, but it wasn't till the spring that I really started to work it out, and I caught a lot of fish on like micro zigs, little 1 foot zigs.
Okay.
Which no one on there at the time was doing, and sweet corn, and no boilie at all. And to the point where I think the whole time on there I probably used 20 kilo of boilie in a season. I was using sweet corn and chickpeas. And that early spring, sort of the time of year we're at now, we start getting them first few sunny days and the fish start jumping out and de-leaching. All I had to do, I worked out quickly on Farriers. If I could see a fish jump out, just cast a rig at it, get a drop, couple of bombs of sweet corn, it was a bite. And everyone else on there is putting out 5 kilos of whole boilies, all on a spot. And where the weed was that bit lower, sort of that early springtime, Didn't have to find a granite clean spot. Just fish like a really, really quickly balanced chod or something like that. Just hoof it out, couple of grains of fake corn, bit of corn over the top, bite, and chickpeas was the same. I don't know if it's just because it was that bit different. They're like 10 millers, but they're super soft. And the chickpeas and the sweet corn on Farriers did me a lot of bites when everyone else I know was just using straight boilies and weren't catching anything. Like at February, March time, I caught loads of fish out of there. And I think everyone was fishing it like I'd fish it almost after they spawned, like they were real hungry, whereas they're just waking up. And between them, I was very mobile on there. So what I worked out, even if it was busy, the fish should never all be in one group. And sometimes you might have to wait till it's dark to find out where the other group is. But there was plenty of times when they would turn up after work, 5, 6 o'clock. Lake's busy. Can't get where I can see fish. Just wait till it tips into darkness, and then you'll hear one show somewhere else, and then you go stand around there and you'll hear another one show, and then set up on that. And I was able to catch fish without anyone even knowing, because they're all fishing the busy swims where the main group of fish is, and I just used to tuck myself in the corner where this little pocket of fish would be. It might only be 10, 12 fish, but if I can nick a couple of them in a night and go off to work, the lake might have only done 4 bites in a night, and if I could have 2 of them whilst there's 15 anglers all fishing the same bit of water elsewhere, like that did me a lot of bites. Just waiting when I got there, just waiting till everything's settled down, everyone's cast out, done all their spomming and that, and then the fish move off and settle somewhere else, and that caught me a lot of fish on there. Just not rush into the known swims that had done all the fish on the weekend. And I didn't, as a general rule, I didn't fish weekends on there whatsoever, just because it was too busy for me.
Excuse me.
Like it's not a massive lake, 25 acres on. You could have 20 anglers on a weekend, but if you went there on a Monday, you'd have 3. And being local again, working local, I just used to drop on and just do the work nights and pick a lot of fish. Even just evening sessions on the way home from work, just go in, catch one off the top. Loved a floater in that lake, so it's very good for. I think with it being shallow, very good for the
bird life again an issue.
Yeah, scare lines. People used to think I was mental. I walk past my swim when I'm float fishing. I got like 6 scare lines out. Are you not allowed to use that many rods, mate? I'm like, there's no hooks on any of them. So that confused a few of the old boys.
You'd have 6 lines across.
Oh, however many rods I had in my van, if the bird's that bad, I'd chuck every one out as a scare line and then just side arm my little control float underneath and fish that.
What, and just play them underneath them all?
Yeah.
Lovely.
I mean, a lot of the swims on there, it sounds bad, especially as there's no wading, but it was the norm on there. You just hook a fish and wade out to it and land it 100 yards out in the lake, because it's so weedy, so shallow that if you couldn't get the fish moving, like you weren't allowed to wade apart from to land fish. So it wasn't uncommon to see people out 100 yards in the lake, like waist deep in water, netting fish and then carrying them back again. So there's a lot of that, especially surface fishing. Like used to fish quite thick gear just to try and get round that weed, but the amount of times they just lock up solid.
There's nothing you can do, is there?
No, and it's barbless hooks on there, and because I knew my card was marked as soon as I went on there in terms of like that bailiff and that, I never did break any rules, so every time I was checked, I was always barbless, like everything was by the book, but it just meant you weren't putting the rod down on the rest to hope it kicks out the weed, because it would just kick off the hook and you never see it.
Do you think that, in terms of your experience, weed? Like, I know that there's a load of rules around different fisheries, which are weedy, fishing barbless, fishing barbed, micro-barbed, whatever. For you, if it was your fishery, would you sacrifice, if you like, the sort of safety aspect, maybe, of them getting rid of a barbless hook over the sort of security, maybe, of the hook hold with a barbed hook? Where would you go?
If I had my own fishery, it would depend on who I was allowing to fish there. If it's people I knew and trusted, I'd be barbed only.
Yeah.
Hands down. But this was a debate we had when we opened Bramble up to private hire. Like that was barbed only as a syndicate for a long time. And then it became open access, and Steve went down the barbless route. And at the time, I didn't agree with it, but his point was, and he's absolutely right, is that a fish that's got if someone cracks off, if a fish has got a barbless hook in it, it can shift that. Whereas if it's got a barbed hook in it, it will tether itself potentially, and just the chances of fish dying as a result of
hire
on barbed hooks. And because he was opening it to anyone that he didn't know, it was a case of, I'd rather everyone use barbless, risked a bit of mouth damage, but didn't get anything tethered than risk tethering. But my own personal opinion, I would always use barbed hooks over barbless, just because, like, again, farriers, like, if you gave them fish an inch, they're gone, they're off. Like, you let any tension go when it's locked in weed. Just my experience, I found they just shift the hook straight away. Like 9 times out of 10, you land a fish before you unhook it, spat the hook in the net.
Yeah,
and I found basically skull fucking them was the best way to get them in through the weed. And if they didn't move, then you just have to go out and
wade after them.
Yeah.
You caught particularly, I've seen a photo because you showed me, your biggest carp, even though it's not weighed and recorded from Farriers, which you didn't weigh, which you didn't record, and which you have a pretty, in no disrespect to Kelly, but a pretty average on your behalf. You really couldn't be bothered to take a photo of it, could you?
No.
What's that all about?
Do you know what the best thing was as well? That fish landed it in a retainer sling.
Can you say this? Sorry, Farriers.
Yeah, sorry, Miles. Well, I'm never getting a ticket for there again, am I? No, so I'd had a fish in the night, landed it. It was a good one, mid-30 or so, upper 30. 10 minutes later, rod's gone again, and I've already got a fish in my net. I didn't have 2 nets, so I fought on my feet and scooped it in a retainer sling. And then when I looked at it in the retainer, it was a lot bigger than I thought. I don't know how big it was. It was one of the A team in there, so it was a good mid-40.
The photo of it, even the photo you've got, that's a big old kipper.
Yeah, it looks like a whale, doesn't it?
Yeah, like a baby whale.
Yeah, and I ended up, I think Curly was fishing another lake on the park, so I phoned him. I was like, fancy coming up doing a picture? He's like, yeah. But you're not allowed guests on there, so it's like, jump the fence, Curly. Curly's a big lad. Jump the fence. And then, we got these terrible night shot photos that half of them have disappeared, and the only one I've got left is that head-on shot. But I kind of like that. And like I said to you before, that's the biggest fish in this country I've ever caught. And
why not the significance? Because if I take that to the resident, there's a proper photo of that somewhere in an album held pride of place.
Yeah.
What is the sort of trade-off with regards to that fish? Is it because it comes from a highly stocked water?
Yeah, I think so. Just because it's one of so many big fish. And like, what was funny with that one, I'd actually caught that fish twice as well. Caught it earlier on in the year, didn't recognise it because they're all scale perfect commons. So I think it just was that element of them being like peas in a pod, and they're truly incredible fish. Them Farriers fish, like they've got to be one of the best strains of common in the country. They're scale perfect, fighting fit, beautiful fish. But it sounds terrible and blasé, but you could go up there and catch 3 fish in an evening on the top. They would all be 35, 36 pound, but they just look like the same fish. So to start with, I was taking a photo of every fish I caught, and then after a while, it's just like I'll take a photo of the ones that are a bit different, like the ones that are a different shape or just something about them, because they just all blend into one otherwise. And that big common was kind of just that. It was just like, it's just another big Farriers common, like, and not that they don't count for anything, because of course they do, and they're incredible fish in their own right. But Farriers didn't mean anything outside of Farriers to me.
Okay,
like, there's people on there. Oh yeah, this is my 14th UK 14th UK 40. How many of them from here? Oh, 14 of them. And I mean, when there's 20 fish over now, there's probably 20 fish over £40. It's less of an achievement to catch one than it is to catch one from Whitefriars, for example, where there might only be 2 or 3 40-pounders in 150, 160 acres of water. So I just took Farriers for what it was. Like, there's a lot of, if you catch 3 fish, 2 of them are over £30. It's that big a stock. And I just took it for what it was. Like I say, I didn't take it too seriously and think, oh yeah, I've caught all these big fish now. Like, I'm a proper big fish angler. And because you're not, you just caught them from a lake with a lot of big fish in. As incredible as they are, and they're proper fish.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I know what you...
Doesn't count for the same when, when there's so many of them in there. it's weird because like it doesn't make a lot of sense saying it, but yeah, just the fact there's so many big fish in there means that to me they're just not worth as much individually. It's just a Farriers fish.
Yeah, it's what you come from and what you know, isn't it?
Yeah,
and however you sort of set the limits on that, that's down to you. Somebody else, as you say, that is that significant or whatever, but that's how angling's different to each individual angler. You talked a little bit before about some guesting chapters around the water park. Now, the water park's got a lot of water.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of water that is not necessarily, I mean, you would know about it because you're very much in there and sort of know, but there's bits that might have stock in it, might not have stock in it, bits that are sort of private water, bits that are obviously public water that people can fish. Talk to me a little bit about the chapters where you've sort of maybe, shall we say, spread your wings around certain parts of the old.
Yeah, so fishing the poaching lakes is something I really, really enjoy it. More and more. The longer I fish, the more I enjoy it.
Is it the unknown element?
It's the unknown combined with... I enjoy my fishing the most when it's me against the fish. Not me against the public, against the other anglers, against the boats, against all that shit. If it's just me on a lake against some fish, that's when I love my fishing the most because it's all on you then. There's no external factors. It's just me versus a carp. Can I outsmart them? And like, a lot of the places I fish I won't mention or say anything about just to keep them quiet. But yeah, one particular lake I fished, call it the Concrete Pit. Fished it in the first lockdown. So obviously we all got put into lockdown. Everyone's desperate to go fishing, weren't allowed to go fishing. There's this little lake, maybe 3 acres, and I've known about it for years. I've known about it for 20 years. And as far as I'm aware, it's pretty much always had 5 carp in it. Just the same 5 carp for as long as I can remember. Years and years ago, it used to be a syndicate lake. It had 5 carp in it. To this day, I'd hazard a guess, there's still just them same 5 carp in it.
Good uns?
Depends on your view of good uns. I think they're incredible. Old, scaly, wild, but...
30-pounders?
One of them is, yeah. It's 2 doubles, 2 20s and a 30. But this lake was incredible. Like 90% of the surface was lilies, if not 95%. Like it's unfishable, basically. And I decided I'm going to catch some of these fish in that first lockdown. Like parked miles away, carried my kit in. And the only way you could fish it was either like right in the edge, and I mean like a foot from the bank, or using a boat. So I had a little inflatable, and I go out and there'd be these like perfect gravel spots in the middle, but only the size of like...
Are you not in blatant sight?
Nah, because it's all tree, well over. You can't even walk around the lake. It was that over. Now you can't. It's got donkeys on it now and a fence around it, so I can talk about it because no one's ever fishing there without getting eaten by a big ass. Yeah, back then like, it was so overgrown. In broad daylight, you might get seen by the road if you're out in the boat, but I didn't do anything in broad daylight. I'd turn up in the dark, get my rods out in the dark, do it all with a head torch, and that was cool. Like, going out lamping the fish at night, knowing which ones are which, because there's only 5 of them in there, and ended up I didn't fish it for long. I did a few trips up there over probably a month, and I had 3 bites. I landed all 3. And one was the same fish twice, which was like an upper 20, incredible scaly fish. I had one that was an upper double, real long snake, and then I see the big one a couple of times, and I see the other 2. Found out afterwards that there was someone else fishing it at the same time as me. He caught the other 2, didn't catch the big one. So between the 2 of us, neither of us caught this big one. But yeah, that was some mega fishing. Like, got to watch every night I did on there. Probably done 7-8 nights over that month. Watch the otter every night. Come on like clockwork just on dusk, and he'd be on all night, and I could watch him with my head torch. Like I say, there's been these 5 carp in there since time began. And that otter doesn't go on there looking for carp. Like, that was the first time I really, really honed in on the fact that individual otters have individual behaviours. And this one was an expert swan mussels. So I'd watch him swimming around the lake, and He'd collect these swan mussels. He'd put them all in one pile on the side of the lake. And when he caught 5 or 6, go back, smash them all up, eat them all, and then go back in for more. And them fish weren't bothered by the otter, and the otter wasn't bothered by them. Like, to start with, it used to really shit me up because I'd be like, bollocks, the otter's on.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to draw the fish into an area and then the otter whack him, but he didn't give a fuck. He was just there for swan mussels and crayfish was all that otter was bothered about. Caught the same tench twice in a night out of there. That was a bit of a burn when you have to go out in a boat to drop your rig, 8-ounce leads, like line coming back on the surface. Caught this big tench, put him back. 2 hours later, caught the same one again. So I put him back in a different lake the next time. Wasn't having him a third time. He got slung in the other lake behind. Yeah, that was cool. Like I said, that me against the fish, like turning up and trying to outsmart what's effectively a wild animal. Because in that lake, they don't need boilies or bait. Like they've lived for many, many years just off naturals. So that I really enjoyed. And I'd have liked to caught the big one, but I've just written that one off now. Like I say, it's got a fence around it with donkeys on it, and them fish can live out the rest of their lives uncaught, unfished for, and
that's pretty cool in a way as well.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, like I didn't overstay my welcome. Just went on there, done a few sessions, like didn't get caught, and thoroughly enjoyed it. But don't feel the need to go back.
Anywhere else? Water park?
Poaching pits.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done a lot, but I don't really want to talk about most of them because they're places that I'll end up going back to again. So, yeah, there's a few. Like that's something I do relish, is going to a lake that potentially no one's fished before. And just not knowing, like, because I'm not a big fish chaser.
Yeah.
I can go on to these poaching pits, catch an upper double and be buzzing about it, like be the best fish of my season, but it's only a double. But that to me means more than a big fat Simo would out of another lake.
Fair, mate, fair. Again, it's each to their own, isn't it? Croc chasing. Oh. Talk to me, mate. Like that fish, Scott's had it, but I think when Mitch had it or made it sort of prominent in terms of media for a wider audience, that fish, I think when I think Cotswolds, I think probably 3 things. I think crayfish,
croc, cider, the 3 C's.
I think otters, mate. They're my 3.
Yeah.
That fish is incredible.
I think, and I'm biased obviously because I think the Cotswolds is heaven on earth, but I think that is the best mirror in the country.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Yeah,
but
I'm biased, and
you're from the old Wolds boy, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, when you know where it originally come from and the age of it and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was going to say it's a bit of you because it's a proper old one.
Yeah, that fish is older than my dad, let alone older than me. And
you've been after it.
Yeah, done 2 seasons on there, and unfortunately lost my ticket because COVID. With it being a club lake.
Oh, that's right. They changed it, didn't they?
Yeah. So this is what I've been told. Because of COVID, they had to cut down the amount of tickets they were selling in order to keep the banks quieter for safety. And what was that, 3 years ago? And they're still on that same thing now. So I had a ticket for 11 out of the last 13 years and lost my ticket when it came to COVID. And it was one of them, without saying too much, if I didn't catch anything, I'd still be fishing there now. But a few people got upset, primarily because I was catching a lot of fish. And
what's the stock of that place, fish-wise?
50.
Is there 50 odd fish? How big?
65 acres.
I thought it was bigger than that even. But 65 acres, loads of no fishing.
I was going to say you got 25, 30 acres of out of bounds.
Yeah.
Can't get a rig anywhere near it.
Yeah, and pretty much that croc lives in a set of snags that is in the out of bounds.
Yeah, ironically, it lives... So you're only allowed... There's one car park for the anglers on there, and everything else is... You have to walk a long way from that car park, and there's a bay, an out of bounds bay in the car park, and that croc lives in that bay under a bush, and he's probably there 6 months of the year, all day, every day, but he's not there at night, and comes out at night. But yeah, that lake, I will catch that fish, whether I do it with a ticket or whether they keep pieing me off and saying that COVID can't give you a ticket. Eventually, I'm just going to go on there and have it out. They won't keep me away forever. But yeah, I was doing good on there. And that lake's the pinnacle of crayfish fishing. Like, it doesn't get no worse than that. That lake, it will make or break your ability to fish through crayfish. And I went on there already comfortable fishing around crayfish. So yeah, I hit the ground running on there. I think at the minute I think it's 26 out of the 50 fish I've had 2 seasons.
What's the stock like in terms? I haven't seen much of the other stock. Is it all the same sort of plated?
No, there is a bit of a mix in there.
Okay.
There's some absolutely incredible commons, like some of the best looking commons I've ever seen. One of my favourite captures out of there was a common, and that common is what I would say is my personal best. I did weigh that. Well, I say I weighed it. Curly weighed it. He wanted to know what it weighed, so he weighed it, and that was, I think it's 42 something. But I caught that on leap year day a couple of years ago. So yeah, end of February, and it was one of them mega 40-mile-an-hour southwesterly winds, big storm. And the amount of times I fished in them and caught fuck all for years, to the point that I'm like, it's a total myth. You're better off on the back of the wind. It's a load of bollocks. Until that year. And I just had a feeling, I knew where they might be. Found this spot up the shallow end of the lake, not on the southwest end, but it was deep, a big deep hole full of bloodworm. And I went up the weekend before and had one off this spot. No one fishing a lake, it's still too early. People, it looks barren and bleak and horrible. And went out in one of these big storms, fished it, caught one, like a mid-20, and went back for the next storm, which was the following weekend, and had a mid-20, one upper 20 in the night, and then at ungodly hours o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock odd, I've had a bite. There's a howling wind, you can't even hear your bite alarm. It's that windy. Gone out, played this fish, and back then you're allowed to use bait boats. You're not anymore. And back then you could, and where it was that windy, I wanted to put a massive lead on because I didn't want that lead moving from this spot. So I had 8-ounce leads on, towed them out in the bait boat. Caught this fish earlier in the night, no dramas. Had this take at 4 o'clock in the morning, playing it, and it beasted me. And I mean beast. I was getting piss wet through in this hammering wind and rain. It went up the margin, it got stuck up the margin, and it's my own fault, but when I caught that fish earlier in the night, I was like, where's my waders? Oh, I've left them in the van. Landed that fish. The second one that beasted me, I couldn't get him moving, so I was like, fuck, can I go swimming? It's it's February. I can swim, but it's just not worth the risk.
No.
And yeah, like you say, cold water shock and all that. So I thought, now be sensible. What can I do? So I ended up putting the rod back on the alarm, opening the bay alarm, and running back to my car, which was 500 metres up the bank. 4 o'clock in the morning, pissing wind and rain.
Oh, that's horrible. And you're on a good one as well. What?
Yeah, no, I've got something decent on the end, so I've run back to my van, run back with my waders, put them on, jumped in the water. The irony is, as soon as I jumped in, I filled the waders anyway. So it didn't matter. Played this fish in, and the first thing I've seen was an 8-ounce lead bouncing about. I thought, fucking drop the lead. And then I've just seen an enormous common, landed it. And yeah, that was quite a special moment, just standing there, piss wet through in this howling weather front. My hooking mat had blown off in the wind. I didn't even have a mat. I had to put this fish in the sack in the just in the water, and then walk to the other windward corner of the lake to go and get my hooking mat because that had gone in the middle of the night. And yeah, that felt like proper big pit fishing. That did. I'd say not another angler on the lake because they all think it's too early, and it wasn't too early. And ironically, that was Feb. Tickets run out end of March, and that was when I lost my ticket end of that March. So I caught another couple in March, and then ended up losing my ticket. I've sort of been dabbling around since then, but one day, by hook or by crook, I'll be back on that lake and I will catch that croc, and it will be the best fish I ever catch in my life because I've grown up on that park, always knowing about that croc. Like you say, when Mitch caught it, that was probably the time that it drew more attention through social media.
Yeah.
That was the first time, like the boom of social media and stuff. Mitch's timing with the capture, the beautiful pictures he got.
The story, the video.
Yeah, the story, everything. Like, it just made that fish a bit more of a household name, but it was well known before that, particularly around the Cotswolds.
Yeah, 100%.
And like I can remember, 15 years ago, probably the first time it ever did £40, and just thinking that is the best fish. That's the king of the park. And when the time's right, I'll catch that. When I'm ready, when I'm good enough. And I got to a point that I was ready and good enough and did really well on there, and then obviously lost my ticket. So the drive to catch that fish is more than ever. And I will go back. I've caught pretty much everything else out there I want. So it's just going back for that one now.
But it's the one, isn't it?
It's the one. And when I catch that fish, which I will, I'll never catch a better fish. I might catch a bigger fish, but I'll never catch a better fish for me.
Yeah, it's a special fish, especially if you're from that from that area, from that water park. Yeah, mate, it's the one. There's bigger fish. We've seen bigger fish.
Yeah, there's bigger. Yeah, it's just that's the pinnacle for me of the Cotswolds, is that one carp. And to go, this is the other irony. You could catch it in the out of bounds, easy, first time I try, and it wouldn't even be hard. But you don't need, like, I know so many people caught that fish by fair game that I don't need to catch it from the snags. Like, I'm going to catch it where I want, how I want. And it's just a case of getting my ticket back so I can do it all legitimately. Otherwise, they'll have to carry me off every weekend because I'll just keep going there till I catch it eventually.
You referenced it really early in this podcast. We're going to talk about it again, mate. Crayfish.
Mm-hmm.
You said to me, quote unquote, I probably know the most about artificial baits and cray deterrent stuff than any other angler because I've done so much of it.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. That's quite a brass, bold statement, and I wouldn't want to down anyone else, but I can't imagine as many people with a great knowledge of crayfish and how to fish round them than me and Mitch, basically.
Talk to me. You said soaking hook baits. You referenced sort of wooden balls soaked in salmon oil.
Yeah.
What else, if you are going to be faced with, and let's face it, you're probably the upper percentage, 0.5% of crayfish, but you could fish any corresponding lake. You might not have fished crayfish lakes before. What can you do to prevent any sort, not any cray activity, but prevent that being of detriment to your presentation, your bait, when you're trying to catch some carp in that same lake?
So number one, the most important piece of advice is get out your head about using real hook baits. Just write them off. Don't waste your time. There is no secret flavour or bait additive or ingredient that you can put in that them crayfish won't eat. They will eat everything and anything. They're cockroaches that live underwater. So,
I've heard garlic is the one.
Yeah, that's a very common one, and I use a lot of garlic in my fishing, and a lot of people think that's because it keeps the crays off. It's nothing to do with that. Carp just love garlic.
Right, okay.
Yeah, garlic won't slow crays up whatsoever. Like, they will eat anything and everything. I've chucked fag butts in and watched them eat the fag butt that I've just chucked in the water.
I suppose that is literally what they do, isn't it? They're there to just
they just hoover up everything. Yeah. So the number one piece of advice, if you're going somewhere with crayfish in it, get some plastics, and if you're not confident in them, flavour them. Because the way I explain it to people, a pop-up is what's the best way to describe it? A pop-up's an inanimate object. It's got no nutritional value to it. Just not talking about your food bait cork balls and stuff, but just take a pink citrus pop-up. It's flavour on a flavour carrier, which is your pop-up mix. And the way I look at it is you can flavour plastics, and the fish can't tell the difference between a flavoured plastic and a real pop-up because they're not eating a real pop-up for its nutritional value.
Just flavour.
Just the flavour. So anyone who's not confident with plastics, I would say you need to get that out of your head. flavour them if you're not confident, because that'll give you more confidence.
What does it matter, the flavour?
No, some flavours take on better than others.
Yeah, give me what flavour takes on plastic-wise better. Beetling? What? I ain't got a clue.
Generally speaking, without giving away all my edges, sweet flavours will absorb better than fishy flavours. I've played around with all sorts, like Max, Mr. Endry. He's a good lad to me, and he sends me all sorts from that bait factory.
Yeah, bits.
And at one point on Large Lake, I was catching all them fish I was soaking my baits in a garlic oil that was so strong, certain brands of plastic baits would dissolve in it.
Jeez.
So I could only use certain plastic hook baits because they wouldn't dissolve in this garlic oil that I had. But yeah, that's important with the crays. And then when you take it to the extremes I do, it's that there's no putty on anything. Tungsten sinkers you can get away with sometimes, but if they're bad, they'll just maul them to bits. So split shot is the best.
They don't bother with split shot?
No, I think it's something to do with it being like bullet hard, like a stone.
Okay.
If there's any sort of squidge to it, it's almost that's all the crays need to keep going at it. Whereas it seems like where obviously a lead shot's bullet hard, they don't bother with them. And then whether in pop-up, do a lot of pop-up fishing or pop-up fishing with plastic baits like Ronnie's. And
Ronnie's, not big hinges. Ronnie's because you can change the hooks, yeah?
Can change the hooks, and also plastics. The plastics out there at the minute aren't particularly buoyant.
Yeah, fair.
So to fish a big hook, which I like to, I won't sacrifice my big hooks. And to fish a big hook and pop it up, I have done it, and I caught a lot of fish on hinges with the old Nash Mutant plastics, like 24 millers. Stick a big bit of foam through that. That'll hold up a big hook, but there's only a limited supply of them big plastic hook baits. So I do a lot with like Ronnie's, and then it's a case of working out with the plastic hook bait you're using, what size hook to what size swivel to everything else that balances perfect, so that you don't need any additional putty. And it sounds simple, but it takes a lot of fannying about working out. Like I've got all different plastic hook baits, and depending on what I'm using, depends what, got it all written down, but depends what hook size I have to use, and depends what swivel I then hook my Ronnie onto for it all to balance perfectly. Because you put any putty on, you run the risk of it getting taken straight off and you're not fishing. So plastic hook baits, no putty, balance everything properly, being able to change your hook, because you will get, it doesn't matter what brand of hook you use, you will get your hooks blunted by them crayfish. So changing them regularly, even if they feel all right, I just change them anyway, because I know the crays would have had a dabble with them. And then lots of bait. You can go two ways with it. You can go lots of bait or no bait.
Yeah.
Like there's the argument that if you put lots of bait in, you draw the crayfish to it. But if you put a single hook bait in, you'll draw the crays are drawn to that anyway. So the way I go about it is lots of small bits, particle crushed boilies, as well as whole boilies, and just put shitloads of it out. Put enough out that there's enough for the crayfish and the carp when they come over.
Basically becomes that numbers game again, doesn't it? You've got that many particles out there. Do you spread it intentionally? Do you create a bigger area?
Yeah, so if I can, like obviously spot dependent, but if I can, I'll just fish an area rather than a tight spot. I'll put 3 rods over, I'll say Phantom, same clip, but Phantom 20 yards from left to right, and then blast a load of bait in all that 20 yards there. Because I know from experience, them crays are there regardless. If you just put 3 single hook baits out, there's crayfish there. If you put 3 hook baits out with 3 buckets of bait, there's still crayfish there. It's just there's more attraction for the carp. And the carp don't care if there's crayfish on the spot. That's another myth. People think, oh yeah, I've been getting problems with crays, there's no carp about. It's a load of rubbish. I've seen carp happily eating over crayfish. I've seen carp eating crayfish. I've watched that croc in that snag sucking up crayfish that's in its way and just spitting them out like they're an inconvenience. So that's a myth as well, is if you're getting problems with crays, there's no carp in the area. Them carp don't care about them crayfish whatsoever.
That is hard.
It's all fun and games.
I think the only other one that I've heard about is sort of your baiting up time in relation to your bite time window, or if you know there's a bite time window, and trying to keep them as close as sort of without putting loads of disturbance in.
Yeah.
I think Benji talked about that.
Did he tell you that I told him to do it?
Oh, there you go. He didn't say that.
That was one of my edges on Large Lake particularly. And I think it's one of the reasons why people thought I was up to no good, was them, as I touched on, particularly that croc, but them fish live in the out of bounds from dawn till dusk and then a little bit into dusk. So in my head, there's no point having rods out in the water when you know that the fish aren't there, they're in the out of bounds.
Yeah.
But if you keep an eye on them snags at night, they soon start dispersing. And like when I was on there, general rule, by 10 o'clock at night, all them fish had vacated the out of bounds, and then they're on the playing field then. And then it was a case of working out whereabouts they wanted to feed. And then my rule on Large Lake was rods out by midnight. So bait out just before, and then rods out by midnight, which meant first rod, 1:45, second rod, 10 to, third rod, 5 to midnight. And then, like I say, bucket of bait before that as well. And the amount of times I get a bite within an hour, just because the fish aren't there when most people are fishing from. They're in the snags. And if you wait till they come... So what a lot of people, I think, made the mistake of on there is they'd put all their bait out like they would on a normal lake, just in the evening going into dark. Well, that's when the crays are most active. And if you put a bucket of bait out on that lake an hour before dark, by the time them fish come out that snag, I can promise every single bit of bait you've put out is gone. So you've got nothing to draw them fish in. So my view on it was I'll only put bait and rigs out when I know the fish are in the area.
Yeah.
And that obviously got people talking and thought that I was stroke boating at night and cheating and stuff like that. But I just take that as a compliment because I think I wasn't.
And you were catching them.
I was catching shitloads, yeah. And people were struggling on there, then accusing me of cheating because I was catching these fish. And a couple of the lads realised it eventually, but it was as simple as just waiting till midnight, then putting my bait and rods out. And then I'd only fish till 7 in the morning, 6:30. Whenever the power boat went round to check the margins make sure it's all safe for swimming that day, I'd just reel in then.
Yeah.
Like that's my fishing done. Yeah, I'd fish 6.5 hours a night, but that was all you needed to fish because the fish weren't there for the rest of the time. And I dare say if people applied that to other waters, it would work. But it was just unique to that situation on Large because of the out of bounds and because you knew you weren't fishing throughout the day because you could reel in, go round and just sit and watch 25 of the 50 fish in that one bush. And it's like, well, I don't want to go round cast out now because they're all in here. So I wait till they come out or work out when they're coming out and have my rods out just before. And yeah, done me a lot of bites because then your hooks are sharper for when the fish are there.
Whereas on a normal lake where you haven't got crays, you're getting those rigs in position when they're in the snags. You got plenty of time, mate. You got an infinite amount of time for them to wait to come out at 10 p.m.
Yeah, exactly that.
But you know you got to play the cray game. You reckon a bucket full of bait, you've got an hour at
couple
dusk?
of hours at dusk, yeah.
Oh God, that's horrible.
By midnight there'd be nothing there.
That's horrible.
You get for a lot of bait, and like I'm fortunate in the position I am, like with my association with Nash and stuff, that it affords me to fish a lot of bait. But if I didn't have that, I would still fish just as much. I'd just be back on the Vitalin and the Party Blend and the cheap bitty stuff to keep them occupied because there is nothing you can put out that they won't eat. So you might as well embrace it. And like I say, I would rather put more out and know there's some there when the carp turn up than not put enough out, get wiped out by the crays, and then they're all on your hook baits, and then you catch nothing.
What materials do you use, like boom sections of those Ronnies? Something like fluoro, real big, thick fluoro?
Yeah, and I mean, generally speaking, yeah, stiff, like fluoros or bristle filaments.
Yeah.
So it is quite agricultural.
yeah.
I've got into, just...
What, like chod link?
Yeah, basically, like 3-4 inches of proper stiff bristle filament. Like if I know what I'm fishing over, helicopters and that as well. So again, because coated braids, I'm yet to find one that can withstand the crayfish activity. They just peel the coated braid apart. You can't use any shrink tube or anything because they just peel that apart like a banana. So you are very, very limited and dictated as to how you can fish. If you want to go to the extents I do of getting around them crayfish, like if you don't care, then crack on and fish your normal rigs and reel them in tangled and not catch anything. But I do think them finer details, even down to like I don't have on my Ronnies, I don't have my hook ring swivel on the shank of the hook because there is not a hook bead in existence that crayfish can't get off. So I fish like a D on the back.
Yeah,
because otherwise I got bored of reeling it. I tried every hook bead on the market. Tried 2 of every hook bead on the market, and they just cut them off and then just you just reel in a bare hook with no hook bait on. So yeah, everything's on the back of D's now. But if I don't catch anything of a night and I reel in with 3 hook baits and 3 sharp rigs, that's a successful night.
Yeah, that's an achievement.
It's the way
itself.
I look at it. Like I've done my bit to get around them crays for that night. It was just the fish didn't turn up or whatever. But yeah, it's quite demoralising reeling in blunt hooks, no hook baits. Like I can't stand it.
Yeah, that would be on that type of lake soul destroying, as you say. The other aspect of the water park, the fairy creatures, the otters, they're obviously synonymous with the area. Do you think, and obviously it's changed over time, I've talked to various guests about this that have spent a lot of time in the Cotswolds. You spent a concentrated amount of time in there. Their presence, their sort of influx and the subsequent movement into the water park because of the fact that you can't fence those type of waters, mate. They're massive, some of them.
Yeah.
Do you think that the presence of crayfish has staved off sort of their impact? Do you think that impact would have been greater without the craze?
Yeah, exactly that. I think for as much of a pain in the arse them crayfish are, in terms of otters, they have been the saving grace to a lot of carp on the water park because, and take Large Lake as an example, it lost a 40-pound common this year to otters. But apart from that, I personally don't know of any fish that have been ottered out of there in the last 5-6 years, and that the otter's on there every winter. It's seen all the time, but there's so many crayfish in there that they just preoccupy themselves on that. Like an otter will always take an easy meal, given the choice. It's not going to chase a carp around if it can just look down and see 1,000 crayfish. So I think for as bad as the otters have got, yeah, the crayfish are a massive blessing. Like the lake that I help run now, we're not fenced at the minute. We've got the otter on there a lot, but the lake's stuffed full of crayfish, and it's quite uncommon that we lose any fish because of the otter. But you see crayfish mashed up in the edges all over the place. And yeah, if we didn't have that as a food supply for the otters, I'd be very worried about a lot of them big old fish because they just wouldn't stand a chance. Like an otter's that efficient as an apex predator. If it decides it wants carp, it'll catch them. And
you've seen them? You've had much because I've seen them on the Spine Road. Unfortunately, roadkill, if you like. But when fishing, I don't think, bar on the Norfolk Broads where I've seen one pike fishing jump in, I haven't had any. They've been on the banks. I've seen them moving across like the top of ridges. So I've seen them on the same water, but in the water hunting in and around a swim, I've never had or I've never witnessed that. But I know some lads, namely Curly, who's been fishing the water, and he's literally had them go through his swim, mate.
Oh yeah, they wipe out your lines off your rod tips. Yeah, I've had it on a lot of waters, particularly on the water park and the rivers. Every time I go out to the Thames now by me, it's just normal. You see an otter every day.
Yeah.
There are several lakes on the park that if someone said to me, I'd never seen an otter, I want to see one, where can I go?
You'd take them.
Give you 4 or 5 lakes where I guarantee you'll see one broad daylight in the middle of the day on a Saturday whilst there's hundreds of people walking around the lake.
Wow.
Because they just don't... I don't know enough about otters to say for sure, but these ones, they're not scared of people. They don't look at people as a threat or anything like that. So, and where a lot of them have been introduced, I think they're just used to people.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean the lake curly fishes is particularly bad. Yeah, there's nothing quite like an otter wiping out your lines for a dent in your confidence, because it will switch the carp off from feeding when the otters are on the lake at the same time. Yeah. But unfortunately, it's just part and parcel of it. Like as much as I don't like otters eating carp, I think they're incredible animals, and there is a place in wildlife for them.
Yeah.
I think to deny that is being biasly naive. It's just that the numbers, and I can only talk about the water park, I can't talk about the greater picture, but I don't know what the natural number of otters that should be on an area the size of the water park is, but there's a lot more than that. I mean, the fact you should never see them, never hear them, they should just be like myth. We see them all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. Like, not quite daily, but if you wanted to, you could see one every day on the water park. Like, there's plenty of them that are that friendly on lakes that it's just a known thing. Go there, watch the otters. And they're technically wild, but they're so familiar with people. Like, there's some lakes that you see dogs jumping in, swimming about, and then there'd be an otter amongst all these people's dogs swimming about, and you're like, that shouldn't happen, but it does round our way.
It's par for the course, isn't it?
Yeah, I said to you the other day, didn't I, about that CCTV footage of an otter chasing a fox up the middle of a main road.
Yeah, bloody hell.
Like, they're just another apex predator.
Yeah, they are. They're tooled up.
Yeah, and I dare say eventually the numbers should balance out once they exhaust food supplies, but we've created the unnatural situation of putting loads of fish in these lakes and making it too easy for them. So
it's a bit of a perfect storm when you look at it. We've got an Otters podcast. Make sure you check that one out.
I will do.
Should be coming soon or done, depending on when I edit this one, mate.
Yeah, I'll
So
be
listen,
giving
mate,
that a listen.
You referenced running a lake, not having fenced it yet, but you've basically become a bailiff, mate, haven't you?
Head bailiff /
Oh, he likes the word head.
Unofficial.
He needed head in there, didn't he?
Well, I don't know how I've ended up in this situation, but blame Mr. Turner.
He's a lovely man, is old James Turner.
For a redhead, he's a lovely man.
No, he's a lovely bloke, mate.
He's got no soul, but that's because he's a redhead. Can't help it.
He's got no soul.
Did you not know that?
He's got kind eyes. Got very kind eyes.
He's got kind eyes and a dark heart.
He likes a bit of dark humour.
Yeah, I get on well with James, and with the line of work I do, like fencing and landscaping, I've ended up doing a bit for Embryo. And a couple of years ago, they acquired this lake in the Cotswolds that I've ended up sort of being their boots on the ground man that just oversees things. I'm not employed by Embryo. Don't. It's all voluntary on a voluntary basis at this particular water that's now a syndicate. But yeah, I'm the one that, I walk my dog around there all the time, just keep an eye on the place. It will be me fencing it eventually when we do fence it. And from my point of view, I've seen it as I'll never be able to buy my own lake. Like, I don't work hard enough to ever be able to even realistically think about it. So to be entrusted with a lake that's not mine, but James has sort of said, James trusts me with the overall looking after the place.
Yeah.
And I've seen that as quite a privilege to be sort of entrusted with the development of a place that hopefully I'll be involved in for a long time. Like, I planted trees up there a couple of years ago with the plan of, when I'm old, sitting under that tree and having a cup of tea and telling anyone that will listen how I planted this tree when it was 2 foot tall and now it's 50 foot tall. And so to be able to oversee it and be involved in decision making and stuff like that is nice, because I'm not going to ever afford my own fishery. So to do it on behalf of someone else and be trusted, because I think, I may be wrong, but I think Fairbrass has only come down to the lake once.
They filmed on it, didn't they?
Yeah, they did do a piece on there. I can't remember exactly what it was called, but it's a cool lake because it's a bit of a unique one in terms of, I think, not a lot, but Embryo take on a lot of new waters.
Yeah.
And have to stock it from the ground up.
Yeah.
This one's a bit different in that they inherited a stock of fish, which is a right mix and match hodgepodge of fish. And it's not a particularly old water. The lake was only dug probably 14 or 15 years ago, but they've inherited a really, really unique stock of fish, which have a bit of age to them, some of them. Not big fish yet. There's a couple of 30-pounders in there, but beautiful fish in a beautiful lake. And I'm hoping over time it's just going to flourish and get better and better. And we'll fence it this year. I don't know exactly when, but at some point we'll fence it. And then once that fence is up, we can maybe look at doing something about the crayfish, start potting the crayfish and reducing the numbers of them to make it easier to fish for people that aren't familiar with the crayfish. My own personal opinion would be to leave the crayfish in there, because they're such a good food source that I would just leave them. But I think the plan will probably be to try and do something about the numbers of them eventually. And if I get my way, there won't be any fish going there anytime soon. It will stay as it is.
You ain't going to want all those new pennies going in, are you?
No, exactly that. I think what they've got's really cool, and they hopefully will nourish what we've got into something, we'll just make them bigger, what we've already got. But the fish in there, it's the right balance at the minute. It's a fairly big sheet of water. It's probably about 40 acres. It's probably 150 carp in there. But where it's all made up of bays and channels and islands and stuff. So go up there in the summer, you can find fish. You can find fish and catch them, which you can't do on a lot of the lakes because they're so busy.
Yeah.
Like Whitefriars, for example. You go up there on a weekend, you won't get a swim, let alone get near a fish. Whereas this lake, it's lovely and quiet. If anything, too quiet. It's sort of underappreciated, I think, by a lot of the membership. And there's something to be said for just turning up at a lake that's quiet, walking around, using your watercraft, finding a carp or a few, and then setting your pitch to catch them, and then catching them. Whereas a lot of the fishing I do on large lake, Whitefriars, anywhere like that, you're not going every time to catch. Like, you're knowing you're not going to catch every time you go. You just have to wade through the blanks. But
how do you deal with that? Is that? Yeah, I don't know, mate. Obviously, it's a kind of sort of given in that type of fishing, especially when it's that busy. But sometimes you're going there just to be there in the hope that there is something that you can glean that will put you on to a future session. But you also know full well sometimes that you go in there and you're shooting in the wind.
Yeah, I mean, when I was fishing large lake, and if I turned up and it was absolutely ramo, like, I'd have an idea where I wanted to be, and that might be 3 or 4 areas. Like, I'd never tunnel vision myself to think I have to be in this swim. But if I knew I couldn't get anywhere near the fish, because it was a club ticket and there's other waters on it.
Okay, yeah.
Used to drop onto the one Curly fishes, but Curly red carded me from there because there's 4 original fish in there, and I caught 2 of them just dropping on between nights at large, and Curly got worried I was going to catch the one he really
wants that one.
Yeah.
Which is a mug and comes out loads.
Yeah, it was a rare fish until Curly started fishing there, and then since Curly's been on there, it does about 14 bites a year.
It's the only thing I've got on him that I keep winding up with, so it's a complete mug, and he's having a mare.
Yeah, and anyone that fishes there catches it, apart from Curly.
What's it like being a bailiff? What's bailiff like?
Bailiff life like?
Yeah, what? That's a very different. When I think of you, I feel you're like an outdoorsman / Cotswold boy who's very do your own thing, crack on with it. You'll do your own thing. I wouldn't ever, if I'm honest, see you as somebody who's like an enforcer on a venue. Not. I'm saying that in the extreme sense.
Yeah. I think because I did it a lot at Bramble when I used to work up there, and we went private hire. So it was part of my job was to meet and greet the anglers as they came on, explain the rules to them, show them around, and then check in on them periodically through their stay just to make sure they were getting on all right. I don't mind the bailiffing. It's a blessing in a way. The lake's very quiet still.
Okay.
So a lot of
I mean, like day to day, like people chancing it, breaking rules. Are you that? I mean, you've got to be. It's your job. You've got to be on it, haven't you?
Yeah. I won't have anyone taking the piss, but at the same time, I'm not. I don't want it to be like Farriers.
Yeah.
In the sense that the bailiffing's taken too far.
Yeah, not to people the point, reeling in at bite time and crazy.
Yeah, and
stuff.
like that. The bailiffing on there gets to the point where they are bailiffing to try and slow down the amount of bites people are getting, whereas I would never be like that. But my view of a syndicate is it should always self-manage to an extent. So from the early days, like from when they first set it up, they needed someone like me just to be there, because it used to be a poaching pit before, and now it's obviously not. So just making sure no one's poaching it and stuff. But in terms of actively bailiffing, like I drive past the lake near enough every day. If there's someone on, I'll have a walk around, but half the time there's no one there. It'd be a double-edged sword though, because it'll do a couple of bigger fish and then all of a sudden it'd be really busy, and then people will moan it's too busy. But no, I don't have to do too much for it. There's a lad, Jack, who works for Embryo, and he's sort of the one above me.
Yeah.
But he covers like the whole of the south of the country. So there's been a few times where James has phoned me up. Oh, apparently there's someone poaching on snails. Can you shoot up there and check? And I'm 10 minutes away, so I can. Whereas Jack's not going to do that because he lives somewhere miles away and he's got to cover the whole of the south. So
you got feet on the ground pretty quick.
Yeah, exactly.
I've heard the builders are the worst part. The gardeners or the builders?
No, it's the gardeners. These gardeners around the water park, you got to watch out for them.
This is a belter, mate.
This is a good one, isn't it? So, how did this start? So, as I said, the lake's very quiet in terms of anglers, and there's 125 odd members, but it's only ever the same 5 or 6 that fish it, and I know them all. I know their cars, so I know who's fishing it with any regularity. And the lake is an absolute pig to walk around. It is ridiculously long. It's made up of all these bays and stuff, so it takes 45 minutes, an hour to walk around it. Pushing kit round it's another story altogether. Thank God for them power barrows, because you just wouldn't be able to fish the top end. And there's a swim 3/4 of the way up the lake. Beautiful swim. Never gets fished. And when I'm doing my dog walking around there on my bailiff laps, seen that someone's had a shit in there. In smack bang in the middle of this swim.
Oh.
I'm like, that's dirty for a start. So I've not thought too much of it. I'm like, right, I don't know who this is, but I'll keep an eye on this. A couple of weeks later, same thing happens again. So I've like upped my rounds. A couple of weeks later, same thing's happening again. I'm like,
Same spot.
And I'm like, motherfuckers, like I'm walking around here every fucking day now. No one is fishing this swim. So who the fuck is it? I'm talking to Turner about it. James,
What's JT's advice on that?
well, James, so this is where it got interesting. So I said to James, I will find the man that's doing this, James, and I will name him, shame him. And James went, I bet you can't find who it is. I said, right, leave it with me. So I took all my trail cameras up that lake and I had it pinned out like Auschwitz. You couldn't walk around that lake
without getting seen.
And more to the point, you couldn't have a shit round the lake without being seen. So I've checked the cameras a few times, had no joy. And then the fruitful day has arrived. Me and Curly have gone for a walk. So I've ended up, to start with, I didn't put a camera in this swim that he was shitting in. I put him sort of either side of it to catch him walking in or out, work out what way he's coming from and that, and also not run the risk of him seeing the camera. In the meantime, he's had another shit in there.
Oh, he's done ya?
And he's dodged my cameras, yeah. Oh. So I'm like, this is a wily old shitter.
It's like otter training, mate, this is.
Yeah, exactly. So I've hidden a camera, banging 6 foot in front of where this man's squatting to shit. Left it a couple of weeks, gone back up with Curly, checked the camera. Curly, we've got him. Not only have we got him, but we've got him in HD. Oh. Like, without giving too much details, you can see everything. And I mean everything.
The whole lot.
Yeah, Dick and Giggleberry's the lot. You could see everything. His tattoos. See the time on his watch whilst he's squatting in a swim on a lake I'm in charge of, shitting.
Straight on the dark web.
Yeah, so the next thing is I've got to work out who this bloke is. And I've sent his picture around to a few influential people. No one recognises him. James is like, this is where it ends. Like, I told you wouldn't work it out. I said, no, I'll fucking find out who this man is. If he's in the Cotswolds, I will find him. So me and Kelly have gone up the following weekend and decided to fish around that area, just in case, by some divine miracle, this bloke fancies having a shit and walks past and we're there. So we're there, and there's a couple of houses back onto the lake. And Curly said to me, that bloke over there looks quite like the bloke that's on the camera. I was like, you what? So I've gone running up to the back of this garden. There were a pair of binoculars spying through this garden. It fucking is Curly. His same tattoos on his arm, everything. We've got him. We have got the shit. I phoned James up. James, get the fucking champagne out. I've found him. I'm going to confront... Oh, no. I phoned him. I said, can I confront him? I said, I don't want to get Embryo in trouble, but can I confront him? James is like, do what you want. You've done the hard work and you've done what I said you couldn't. So it's on you now. You've got free reign. So I'm like, right, brilliant. This bloke's disappeared. I'm waiting. Me and Curly, I'm like geeing myself up. Next time he comes out, I'm having him. He didn't come back out. I'm like, Curly, I'm not going home and leaving this. So there's a woman dottering around in the garden. So I've shouted her over. Excuse me. She's like, oh yeah, hello. Come on over. I said, is your husband about? She's gone, no. Why is that? I said, I think you might want to get him. This is quite important. She went, oh, he's tucked up in bed ill, I'm afraid. Why is that? And I said, well, I've got a video of your husband shitting in the bush down there.
You didn't say that to that woman.
I did, unfortunately. And she went red as a beetroot and went, oh, I don't think that'd be my husband. I said, well, who is this? Presented her with the video on my phone.
No.
Of said man's dick, poop, the lot. And she's just sunk into a pit in front of my eyes and gone, that's the gardener.
Oh.
He was here earlier today. I'm so sorry. And with that, I sort of said, well, look, I apologise for getting
for the graphic nature of this video I've shown you.
And also for straight away assuming it was your husband. Instead, it was your gardener. Easy mistake to make. I said to her, I want it tidied up. Not her, but I said to her, I don't see why I should go and pick that up.
Oh, you want the
human
mess
feces
tidied up.
Yeah. So I said, because she said, oh, he's gone today. He won't be back till next weekend. I said, well, if you can ring him, might be better, but I'm happy to ring him if you're happy to give me his number. She said, no, I think it's best coming from me. Right. I said, I'll leave that with you then. Left my camera in there. Anyway, she fucking, bless her, she went out herself in a pair of rubber gloves that night, cleared up all her gardener's shit from the swim, and phoned James up apologising about it, dying of embarrassment and everything. So, yeah, I solved the mystery of the phantom shitter. And
that is weird.
It is weird.
If you're a gardener, mate, and you need the toilet.
I'm a gardener and I regularly need the toilet. And I just say to customer, can I use your loo? And 100% of the time they say yes. Whereas she'd said to me, she said, I've said to him before, if he wants to use a loo, he knows where it is. And she said, I did wonder where he was going to the toilet because he never comes in the house. And now she knows. But since then, no more pooing around the lake. Got to the bottom of it.
Have you seen him since?
I haven't seen him since, no.
She's got rid of him, hasn't she?
I imagine she might have got rid of him, but don't shit around my lake.
Imagine that review.
Story. Huh?
Imagine that review.
Yeah.
Looking for gardening services.
Yeah, why did you lose your previous job?
That's a good little number down the old Cotswolds, wasn't I?
Yeah, well, he'd have carried on being on a good number if he stopped pooing in my bush.
Yeah, fair play.
Not on my watch.
Not on my watch.
Quite literally.
What do you think? And we'll talk about it as we're there. For the future of the water park for you, you've talked about the croc, you've talked about that. As a sort of a whole, do you see yourself ever completing it if that croc is caught and moving on?
If I caught that croc, when I catch that croc, I will struggle for the drive.
Yeah.
Mitch has found exactly the same thing. Like when you catch the king of the water park, there's no better fish in our eyes. So that will be the pinnacle. But then after that, it will just be a case of just enjoying my fishing and bouncing about, not campaigning anywhere, I don't think.
There's also a massive sort of community in there. I think that's one thing I get from there. Like when we were down there just a couple of weeks ago, as you said before, everybody knows everybody. It is a very sort of, it is a tight community. Do you know what I mean? There might be the odd rift and fallout over a fish or something or other, but generally
everyone gets
absolute wrong-uns who get on.
Yeah. Oh yeah, a bunch of alcoholics, but they all love each other. And
We had a visit from the old Cerny Banks crew. Incredible, lads.
Ennett, shout out Cerny Banks.
Hilarious.
Off their heads.
Absolutely.
Lovable idiots, a lot of them. But yeah, like I said earlier, I imagine it has a bit of the Yateley feel back in the day.
Yeah, maybe.
Just with that.
What about other people you've met? Because you've met a lot of people fishing that area who are not necessarily diehard Cotswoldsmen, but have been fished those waters. Your likes of your Gaz Farriers, etc.
Yeah.
And also sort of old school legends like Ian Poole back in the day on
Paulie,
Welford and around there.
Yeah.
What sort of you sort of, how can you say, your fond memories of sort of people that you've met around there that are not your sort of die-hard Cotswoldsmen?
I don't know, because I do have friends all over the place. It's not necessarily because they've ever fished the Cotswolds, but like a big thing last year was Benji coming down.
From the old West Country?
Yeah, from the Black Country. Yam Yam.
He's a top boy, isn't he?
He's a legend, is Benj. And Ben should have come down to Cotswolds a long time ago, and I've been telling him. He wouldn't have it, and then he come down and he went, yeah, you're right, I should have come down here.
It is a bit of him.
Ago. Yeah, massively bit of Benj. I mean, a lot of people, they come to Cotswolds, they get their ass kicked, and then they fuck off again. And you don't hear too much from them. So, in terms of like, there's not been many outside anglers that have come into the park and taken it apart with their angling ability. There's people who've come to what park done well. Obviously, Lloydie ended up having a hell of a few weeks on large in his build up to the croc, but it took him a long time to work it out.
Yeah,
and Stokesy had a couple of nice ones from Farriers, but he fished hard.
Yeah,
and he did his time for them couple of bites, and then pulled off because he just didn't deem it worth it. And I think maybe we're just, I don't know, that not everyone that fishes on the water park likes fishing them sort of places. There's plenty of people that want to try and catch something every time they go fishing, but there is just a cult.
Yeah, that's the word.
Yeah, cult sort of group of anglers that it doesn't matter how hard the lake is, it doesn't matter how few fish there are. If there's something in there you want to catch, you're going to go and catch it, like regardless of what it takes to do it. And I think that there's probably not many places in the country like that, where there's this community of these hardened anglers that just think nothing of blanking for the whole of winter on there.
I think that's what got me, mate. You said the two words there, cult. It is like a cult, because in some ways it's just completely punishing. Like that for me, and I've talked to Alan about it in podcasts, I've talked to a lot of lads here, like location being on fish, even in a busy day ticket scenario, like Al will move lakes, he'll move complexes, he'll make sure he's got something to fish at. On there, like a lot of the time you are not fishing for anything other than shadows, mate. There's a lot of time in between actual opportunity for one reason or another, and you have to have a certain tolerance to that not a lot of people can do, mate.
Yeah, I think you got to be quite thick-skinned if you want to do that sort of fishing with any longevity, because like, I take small things out of my fishing when I'm not catching. So, reeling 3 rods in with 3 oak baits on in the morning, that's a successful night. Reeling 3 sharp hooks in, that's a successful night. If I hear one show in the night, that's a successful night. It's all, and Alan finds it mental when I say to him, like, when I was fishing on large, I'd say, yeah, fuck it, I'll wait up till midnight, put my bait and my rods out, and then if I hear one in that area after my rods and bait are out, I'm fucking buzzing, Alan. And he's just like, yeah, but what if you don't catch? I'm like, doesn't matter. Like, that's enough of a buzz to get me straight back down the lake and do it all again. Whereas he'd be like, no, I just want to catch every time. Whereas sometimes just hearing one in the area is enough to light the fire to keep going, especially when no one else has heard it because they're all asleep.
There is that element of competition, I suppose, but it is such fine sort of gains and margins. When I look at sort of in my fishing, I could never put myself on that lake. I just couldn't justify it, I don't think. Maybe things will change, but it is a certain breed. A band of brothers, mate.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, different strokes for different folks,
Yeah,
isn't
yeah,
it?
yeah,
Like
totally.
some of the best anglers I know, like my mate Stewie, for example, unbelievable underground angler, but he likes to know he's got a chance of a bite every time he goes fishing, regardless of where it is. And he did a bit on Christchurch last year or the year before, battered it.
Yeah.
Didn't do a night, just fished days, battered it. Phenomenal angler, but he wouldn't go somewhere like Large because it's unrealistic for him to expect to catch something with the style of fishing that he does. And I guess just in the Cotswolds, there's maybe a denser population of people that are willing to go through that in order to get the rewards and just keep going for months and months, plugging away to eventually get a reward. Whereas other people like a reward every time they go, don't they?
Yeah, certainly so, mate. Well, there's magic there, mate, and it keeps a lot of people motivated and a lot of people fishing in that area. So absolutely fair play, Cotswoldsmen. I've thoroughly enjoyed this tour of the Cotswolds as we weaved through, mate. There's a lot of anecdotes, humour, but also a lot of real good action points for people that can take away to their lakes, especially around crayfish and that type of fishing. Before you go, 10 quickfire questions. I don't know if there's 10, there might be less, but you don't know about these. These are not prepped. So these will test your mental agility, mate.
Are they dark?
I don't think they're dark.
Right.
I've tried to stay away from darkness. I don't think people like that generally as a podcast. You know what I mean?
Who would you rather for a night out?
Maybe.
Michael Barrymore or Ian Huntley?
Jeez.
I don't know.
Mate, I think you have spent too long waiting for your buzzers to go. Who wins in a fight, you or Curly?
Me all day long. Curly's a gentle giant.
Talk to me about the actual technique of fighting Curly.
I'd chew his face off, mate.
Like a rat?
Like a Wolverine. Just
So
without
it'd be more rat-like.
Before he's even got a chance to think about it, he'd have no eyes.
He's a unit though, mate.
Yeah, he's a big lad, but I'd take him down, no trouble. I used to be a prison warden. Man can handle
You used
himself.
to be a prison warden?
I did, believe it or not. Hairdresser, prison warden.
I know you're a
fencer.
hairdresser.
Yeah, I can handle myself, especially against Curly. I'd destroy him.
Oh, we should have gone a different route on this podcast. Forget fishing, talked about the prison warden days.
Yeah, I mean, it was
Do you have a fellow carper angler inmates?
Not inmates. There was another jailer that I worked with that used to run a couple of carp lakes, so I used to chat to it about him, but...
Not inmates.
Nah, not inmates. I only did it for a couple of years.
Couldn't smuggle a bit of hemp in and make some friends.
I probably would have ended up in there if I did that with him. But yeah, I would. It wouldn't be a competition. Curly'd be dead before he'd even realise what's happening.
That's a very definite statement. Well, he'll hear this, won't he? Drum and bass or country and western?
Country and western all day long.
Yeah, that's very Cotswolds, isn't it?
Sign me up for a bit of Neil Young any day, mate.
Right, here we go. Only fish for wrong-uns, I've put in inverted commas, however you deem that, or never fish again for any species anywhere.
So give up fishing or only
Or
be able
only
to
fish
catch,
for wrong-uns.
I'd have to go fishing still, so I'd have to catch some shitters.
Catch them? Well, you would go fishing for wrong-uns?
If I had to. If that was the only choice of
I just
giving
want
up...
the soundbite of you saying, I would fish for wrong-uns.
I'd fish for wrong-uns, Hassan.
Yes. That's made my year. 3 celebs you'd take fishing.
Alan Shearer, because he's my version of God.
Is he?
Yeah, I love
Are
Alan
you a
Shearer.
Newcastle fan?
Yeah.
Why?
Don't know. Just always have been. My family's all Fulham fans. Used to have a season ticket.
Is there something about black and white for you guys?
I don't know.
Fulham and Newcastle, top.
Yeah, I've not thought about it that way, but I supported Fulham when they were shit, mate. Not interested now they're in the Premiership. Old Division 3, sign me up for that. So Alan Shearer would be on my guest list.
Yeah.
I'm guessing dead or alive, don't
Oh, yeah, you can, yeah.
What were we doing? Going for dinner?
Celebs. No, you're taking them fishing.
Taking fishing. Okay.
Shearer.
So yeah, definitely go Alan Shearer. I think. I'd like to go just with someone really interesting. So David Attenborough.
Yeah, he'd be a good one.
Just because I'd love to spend time in his company, even though he probably wouldn't enjoy fishing or my company. And number 3 would be I'm going to say Alan Shearer, and let's go I don't know, a comedian of some sort, some Ricky Gervais. I like Ricky Gervais. Take him.
Very BBC heavy, isn't it? Shearer, Attenborough, Ricky Gervais. Office was on BBC Two, wasn't it?
I think it probably was.
Full
You're right.
Beeb. Nice.
Yeah, didn't think of that. I'm a BBC man.
What? That's another soundbite.
British Broadcasting Corporation.
One history carp you wish you'd caught.
The Bishop.
Yeah?
Mary. There's loads.
You can't.
Probably Mary.
You got to pick one.
One, Mary.
The Bishop surprised me for some reason.
Sick carp. Foundation of so many people's carp fishing. Yeah, if I just had to pick one.
Mary. Yeah. Secret you've never told anyone publicly on a podcast.
Scared to touch my own belly button.
Are you actually?
Yeah, can't do it.
Why is that?
Makes me sick. I've got a phobia about touching.
Physically sick, actually vomit.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Physically can't touch my own belly button. Never have been able to. So, yeah, that's something not many people know about me.
That is incredible. Favourite carp fishing Cotswolds saying?
If it ain't ripping, we ain't No.
We ain't stripping.
No, I said that one wrong. It's meant to be if it ain't stripping, we ain't eating. No, I think my one is probably courtesy of Mitch Hammonds. In reference to ladyboys.
Wow.
Don't turn them down, turn them round. Mitch Hammonds. Probably my favourite saying that goes around the Cotswolds at the minute.
What's the one that I caught a few tench on our latest trip, and I was something like, if it ain't ripping, keep sipping.
Yeah,
drinking
on
your
your
tea.
beer or your tea. Yeah, that's another one. But no, I think don't turn them round. Don't turn them down. Turn them round.
Oh, worrying. 3 words to describe yourself.
I would say fairly quiet. Maybe a bit eccentric and sophisticated, just 'cause I like the word.
Oh, nice. Best piece of advice you've been given? Could be fishing, could be non-fishing.
Probably, as I got told by someone many years ago, be good at what you do and you'll never have to work a day in your life. And I agree with that. I don't have to advertise for work or anything like that.
Yeah.
Just do a good job and the work will always find you. So probably that. Be good at what you do and you never have to find work again.
Final question.
Go on.
Night out on the bank or night in with the missus?
Well, I don't have a missus, so that's an easy decision to make.
Ladies who are listening to this podcast,
all 3 of you, I am available.
If you want to get in contact with Cotswolds Puke, if you go on Instagram and type in that exact name,
and hit me up in the
there's
DMs.
only one.
But if you go fishing, I'm not interested.
Oh, is that you ruled it out?
I would never date a girl that goes fishing.
What?
Too close to home.
Why are you saying that?
It's just too close to home, isn't it?
Seems a bit close-minded.
It's my time away from all that shit. Like, my fishing's my downtime, and if I had a bird that wanted to talk about fishing, no, I just wouldn't like it.
Oh, I don't know if you. I think that's a bit fixed in your thinking.
Sorry, ladies, but I'm not saying there's anything wrong with lady carp anglers. I'm just saying I wouldn't want to date one.
I think you're ruling out a lot of potential sort of.
Well, if I am,
dates.
Please feel free to hit me up. But I just think it'd be too close. It'd be like working with your missus. I've got mates that go into work and they work in the same office as their missus, and I just wouldn't like that.
Okay.
Time apart. So, in answer to the question, even if I did have a missus, it'd still be night on the bank.
Die hard to the end, didn't you, mate?
Fishing came first. Fish before muff, innit? Fishing came first.
What a boy. Luke, even though I can't call you Luke, Puke, thank you very much for your time. Thank you guys for listening and watching. I'll be back soon with another podcast. Until then, if you're in the Cotswolds, you will see this man driving up and down the Spine Road. Make sure you stop him and thank him for his podcast because I've thoroughly enjoyed it, mate.
My pleasure.
Thanks for coming in.
No problem.